Hello and welcome to the Pursuit of Possible podcast. I'm your host Luke, and in these episodes we'll be exploring different ways to overcome limiting beliefs so that we have the tools and resources to overcome adversity in our day-to-day lives. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello everybody and welcome to episode 3 of the Pursuit of Possible podcast. Today I am joined by my dear friend Niesha. Now we're going to be doing things a little bit different this time. We are actually going to be doing a commentary over this episode of the podcast that we filmed, I think at like the end of December, start of January. Now, the reason we're doing this, we actually tried to record this first 10 minutes yesterday, but we had some audio issues. So if we kind of look like our outfits have changed or things look different after about 20 minutes into this episode or however long it is, that's why. But we realized, so at the time that we filmed the last podcast, at least for me personally, I have done a lot of self-growth since then. And at the point that we were filming that podcast, we were both sort of in a weird place. I was like feeling quite, triggered by certain things Niesha was saying and vice versa. And so we thought it would be interesting if we actually commentated over that podcast to sort of, I guess, dissect sort of where we were at the time and what sort of defense mechanisms were coming up for us, because we thought it would be, like an interesting point of view. But Niesha!
I am really excited. So when we did this yesterday, it was so fun to figure out how we've changed and where things were coming from and to see it retrospectively. So I'm excited to see what comes up today, because obviously we've done this bit already, and but we can't really remember what was said.
We can't remember at all. So
I'm really excited to dive into it again, and this is such a cool opportunity, and it's so just, it's almost like fulfilling in a way, but also it's just really fun to see how you showed up before and where your triggers were and your defense mechanisms, and then to see that and see you fighting through that, but knowing that you've changed from there, it's really fun.
Yeah,
so I'm
is
keen.
Really fun. Yeah, so it's going to be a long episode, guys, but the source is near the end. If you want the source of the episode, it's at the end. For people listening on Spotify, because I understand that you are probably super confused right now. So when you hear this sound, it means that you're heading into the podcast that we are commentating over, and when you hear this sound, that means you're coming back into the present moment where we're commentating on top. So just before we continue, I just want to say to you all, so we spent a whole day, I think it was either yesterday or the day before yesterday, we recorded the bulk of this podcast, and I have since gotten COVID and I've got it now, and so my head is quite like foggy and I'm feeling like slight irritations, and I think it's just the technical issues that we've been having is like overwhelming me a little bit. So if you notice any sense of like, Luke's not with it, that's why. But after about 10 minutes of the podcast we're commentating over, things get better. So just thought I would be open about that. Today, I'm really excited because I've got one of my favorite people in my absolute whole life. And she's a good friend of mine. She's a do-everything guru. And that's pretty much described.
Okay. Okay, I forgot that this was there. Okay, so Guru, when I heard that, you could look at, oh my God, you paused it at the same time too.
Yes.
Look at my face. This was, okay, when you say Guru, to me, I went into this whole mode of straight into my head of like, oh my God, he called me a guru. I am not a guru. Because to me, guru is someone that's an expert in their field, and I'm not. And I didn't comment on it, but in my head, I was like, oh no. And this was right at the start. So you can see it in my face. That is pure like, oh no, I'm not your guru.
This is how I started the podcast. Yeah. I guess something that I've always actually struggled with is like articulating things with the right language. Like when I said guru at that point in time, genuinely my definition of guru at the time was someone who like had interest and in a particular thing, and like Although to be honest, like it makes sense that a guru is someone who's like an expert at something, but I don't know, I tend to like throw these words that don't really make sense in context together sometimes, so I'm sorry.
No, it's just funny, but it's interesting because obviously something like that immediately can put you in your head, right? If you don't agree with what's being said about you, and it made me really nervous. So you'll see and hear from this point, I was pretty nervous, which is interesting too. But it's also just fascinating how we use, I feel like it can go both ways because there's so many words that have double meanings, or people will attribute a different meaning to it. And that makes it really, really hard in our culture, especially in cancel culture, to talk openly and to express what you're thinking when your definition of a word might be different to someone else's, and yet there isn't an openness to figure out why that word was said.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
So I think like that's interesting in and of itself, but yeah. Here we go.
Here we go. Strap in completely. So introducing Niesha.
Hi. I've never been called a guru before.
Dude, you are literally a guru of everything.
Hi. Nice to see you all. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as always. We're super comfy. We're currently on 2 beanbags on a table with Melbourne in the background.
Ta-da!
The beautiful city. It was a bit of a grind to get this setup happening.
I feel like it was a very fun time.
Yeah, it was super fun. We got these cool coffee cups, and now these are crazy. So we ordered a takeaway, like iced beverages, and I was like looking down at my phone, and I look up, and they give me these cans, and they somehow prepared it in a can, but it's an actual can that you had to like open. I don't know. Maybe it's not that hard to figure out how that works, but it like blew my mind.
It's wild. I love it actually. I love it. If I could have that as like a takeaway, it's so aesthetic. It's like a little takeaway can in the morning.
Nice, with a bit of a straw. We should probably talk about the topic of the podcast.
We should talk about
Which is okay. So yeah, it's interesting. So normally when I talk to guests, like I know, like oftentimes they'll have something like a adversity that they've been through. For example, we've had Lukey on the podcast who had a skateboard accident, and we were talking about how he went through that whole period in the hospital where you get told you might only have a 3% chance to live, and you might become paralyzed, like, you know, for your whole life, and like how to navigate that. What really fascinates about you is just your ability, or just your desire to want to do everything and try new things constantly. But also what's amazing about it is if you have this idea in your mind about something you want to do, you make it work somehow. And just like a full disclosure, like maybe Niesha can share a bit more about her situation, but she's sort of like, at the moment, she's just started her own business. Where she's doing some filmmaking and some photography and whatnot. But she's finding herself in situations where she's like traveling the world, you know, exploring different activities and avenues, whether that be dancing or learning how to sing or learning how to do, I don't know, like, how about you? How about you share?
Okay. Side comment.
This is painful.
Side comment, I am not currently singing, just as a little note. That is something that I want to learn. And I actually, last night, I looked up all the classes that I want to take where I'm moving next. So it is in the works, but that's not what I'm doing at the moment. But I am trying a lot of other things. So
yes.
just a note that I didn't say in the podcast.
Hey, in my defense, she tells me a lot like of things like she wants to start doing. And so I go, oh yeah, she's doing it. Because I just presume you're just going to do it because you're a doer.
I think that came into your head because we've been talking about doing singing lessons together for, I'm shouting out Luke here, but this is, I'm calling
video
it out.
Coming soon.
This was a video that we wanted to make, which may be in the works of learning to sing for us. I don't know if he wants to reveal it yet. So for a certain goal, we want to learn to sing together. So I think that's why it came out for you here.
Yeah.
Yes.
People, sort of, what you've been up to recently.
What I've been up to recently, okay. Well, recently I've been just, okay. I gotta think about this. So recently I've been doing a lot more. So here, now we're actually going to get into a bit of the meat. Here, you can see I'm super nervous and I'm finding it difficult to articulate myself, and my thoughts at that time, I can remember, were really muddled. So it was really hard to organize my thoughts. And that was because, so Oh yeah, a note I haven't actually said yet. So I came into this in a pretty bad state. I tried my best to get into a good state for this on the day, but I was going through quite a bit and I wasn't quite sure how to regulate myself at this moment in time. So I was currently moving, I was having relationship problems, I was finishing my degree, I found out about some health issues. So what you're getting right now is someone that was super, super stressed that week and then trying to regulate in order to show up authentically. But I wasn't able to completely do that. So you can see me stuttering and struggling to formulate my words clearly, and therefore I hesitate. So it's so important to get into the right state of mind. Like even today, like being completely honest, not only is Luke sick, I was sick too, and probably with COVID because my mum's workplace all has COVID. So we synchronize a lot. The first time we got COVID, we got it together as well. Yeah, it's true. And he had to stay at mine. So, but yeah, so full disclosure, I'm also in a bit of a headspace right now where I didn't sleep very well and I'm feeling quite low. So we're just showing up super authentically today, which is awesome. And you'll see, even though we're tired, we'll still be able to speak a lot better than we did here, I think we'll find, which will be an interesting experiment because we're being authentic and we're not worrying so much about how we appear or what we say. But yeah, so you might not get as much of a, yeah, but you are getting honesty and we hope to be able to share what's going on as much as possible. So
yeah, and it's so
just
important.
A little note.
Yeah, and it's so important. Like it's actually really hard for me to sit here, if I'm being honest, and look at this podcast because obviously authenticity is like such an important value of mine, but also for the you effect. And so when I see myself showing up in ways that aren't authentic, I would say this is one of those situations. It's hard to watch because I'm like, man, I was going to put this out there without a second thought. It's like, dude, no. Like, you know, and of course, like we're all human at the end of the day, right? We're all going to have moments of, you know, not showing up as who we want to show up as. And I guess that's why we want to show this because it shows that, you know, even we don't show up in the ways that we want to sometimes. Yeah.
So for me at the start of this year, I had a really big moment. So last year was like the hardest year that I've gone through with a lot of limiting beliefs and perspectives and attachments and, you know, trauma attachments and things like that I really prevented me from doing what I really wanted to do and following my intuition and listening to that. And it was obviously it's a life journey, but it was up until last year where that all came to a head. And near the end of the year, I started making some decisions and had some conversations and let go of a lot of that trauma that I was holding on to around these things and made a different decision around what path I was going to take. That's a whole story in and of itself. But like after that, I started seeking and being a lot more open to, okay, well, what do I feel drawn to do? What do I want to do? What am I excited to do? What have I always wanted to learn that I've been too scared to try? And so I got an opportunity in the middle of the year to finish off my degree and do an exchange almost. And it was a battle to make that happen, another story, but of like, you know, overcoming resistance to reach that really peak return. And because I felt strongly that was a really good opportunity for me. And sure enough, I went there and I was like, what am I scared to do that I've always wanted to do? I could do any subject I want. And so that was dance. And so I did dance and I did videography. And then I came away from that, and with obviously the support of Luke, I'm forever grateful, to be able to start a business in videography. So that was awesome. And I got to learn dance. And then ever since, yeah. And I think in terms of trying new things, that's something I've always been drawn to doing. I see there's so much to learn, and being a student is so fun and so exciting. And at least for me personally, I know this is different for different people, but to learn how to interact and move my body in different ways and to express myself. So I'm particularly drawn to sport, but then again, I'm also drawn to like the arts and to science. Like I've learned so many different kinds of sciences. It's insane. My uni journey is ridiculous. And, you know, to traveling and meeting new people and new cultures like that, drawn to learning new things, you always grow. And even if it's not something you want to pursue later, you take so much from it and I never regret it. So for me, that's something I've always been drawn to doing, but there were things I was scared to do that I started doing this year because I realized that if I was scared and I allowed that to hold me back from doing it, then I would always feel resistant and like I didn't have my own back and support in a way. And so it became really important for me to face that challenge and that unknown, to know that, oh, I can do this, and then unlock a new side of me that I've always wanted to do. Yes, I feel like this is just like a very like clinical study of like what I'm doing, but there's a lot to it than that, but that's...
I absolutely love the way you spoke there, and particularly like and like what you were saying, because I think we did speak about this yesterday, so I'm glad I remembered. But yeah, it's the idea of becoming a student of life and finding that fun. I feel like as we sort of enter, and I'm speaking from personal experience, entering my early 20s, like I definitely felt this sense of like desire for security, and I feel like, you know, when we're able to sort of, sorry, I'm getting the brain fog, full transparency, it's happening, but I guess the point that I was like wanting to make was around the concept of like when we're open to becoming a student of life and growing, it does mean that sometimes we can feel like, oh, we don't really know as much as we thought we knew, which I think a lot of people potentially avoid that because it kind of gives them this sense of instability, which I think was kind of something that we sort of spoke about yesterday.
We did. I think we had like a half-hour conversation about this
Damn.
because this was where we got to the comment I made about we know that everyone can specialize in doing a career or specialize in learning a skill set, but can you specialize in being yourself? That was the comment we got to last time from this conversation. So we went on a journey.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. There is a lot of stress around that. And transparency, like I felt that too. Like I have that pressure as well. It isn't something that, you know, I was just born without and that's why I'll do these things. It's especially like right now, like I feel that really strongly as well, to conform into a certain pathway in order to have security, so that you'll be like, oh, when I have security and I'll feel better, I can then have more capacity to do other things. And this was the conversation we got into about having where you were placing your certainty, I believe.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Right? Yeah. Okay, so this is why we're going to have a bit of brain fog, because we're thinking about the past couple of days and obviously that's still coming to our brains, and we, you know, we'll mess that up with our thoughts right now and it'll jar. So I understand why you have some brain fog as well there. But yeah, we were talking about certainty and about how it's something from Tony Robbins' course that I took actually, which actually helped me out so much. But we have a certain number of buckets that we need to be filled in our life, right? So we have community, we have physical health, we have certainty, we have uncertainty, we have relationships. I think there's a bunch of buckets. There's a few others, I believe, that we need to fill in our life in some way. And currently, in terms of certainty, a lot of people, and I'll talk about mine in a second because this was a big development point that I made recently, but a lot of people will put their certainty in their security, right? In their job security. And in doing that, it means that they're less likely and they don't have as much capacity to expand in terms of uncertainty in that area of their life. So they feel like in order to be okay, that bucket has to be filled, which is true. The bucket has to be filled. But in the perspective of that particular person with that belief system, that bucket can only be filled by getting work. The thing is, we can change where we place our certainty. And that was a big breakthrough I had recently, which helped me develop myself,
Yeah.
which was, for me, I was putting certainty in my logic. So what I did was I would find it so hard to separate myself from conversations or that I didn't completely understand, or trusting other people if they had a perspective I didn't understand, or also making a decision where both, and this was the one I was really I was burnt out even a couple of weeks ago from this exact thing, was having two places, two paths I could go down, which both had logically had a lot of benefits, and both logically I could figure out had a lot of negatives. And I didn't know which one I wanted to go down, and so I was stuck because I couldn't logic it out, and that was exhausting. And I was stuck in that for a really long time, and it was really stressful. And then I realized I was filling up my bucket of certainty and placing it in logic, and that way I didn't have the capacity or the space to make a decision based on what I felt with a trust that it would work out well for me, if I didn't have the logic backing it. And that made me stagnant, that made me stuck. And I realized the other day, at least for me, a place that I could put that in is, and take this word for whatever you mean it, whatever you particularly want it to mean, but I can place my certainty in having faith that it will work out, rather than in my logic. And that way, if my certainty cup is filled by believing that everything happens for me, that, good and bad, it will develop me, and the end result will come full circle, and it will be, better than I could imagine. If I have certainty in that faith, which is something I'm actively trying to build the past few years, because everything's a muscle. If I have certainty in that faith, then it frees up my ability to have uncertainty in what direction I go down logically, and therefore make moves based on how I feel and keep moving forward. And so that was something that I came to terms with the other day as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And in a similar way for me, when I moved to Melbourne, or Victoria, I should say, because I went from this sort of Canberra environment, which was sort of, I wouldn't say a small mindset, but it definitely bubbled in my ability to expand my mind because of the type of culture and environment that's here. And so when I moved, I found I was suddenly surrounded by all these new perspectives and people, and I was sort of oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then I think what ended up happening was I lost myself because I lacked all the certainty in the world, because I realized that nothing's certain. And then I sort of had this breakthrough, actually. It was on a trip to New Zealand where I realized I was you know what the most grounding thing in the whole world is? It's the idea that I will never have the answers to the secrets of the universe. And just coming into full acceptance of that. And then that's sort of, I guess, my version of that certainty cup that you were talking about. I was oh, nothing's certain, and that's certain, right? And there's so much power in that, in the acceptance of that, because when we're constantly trying to chase something that's impossible is a strong word. I know some people might not like that, but trying to the human brain can't comprehend everything. It can't. It would combust. So yeah, I found that really helpful for me as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, so you had certainty that everything was uncertain, and therefore you freed up your ability to do what you wanted to do and not be sure of what that looked like in the greater scheme of the universe. And therefore you have so much less pressure because you don't have to figure it all out. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. 100%. Yeah. That's awesome.
All right. Let's continue. The face is so good.
Yeah, there was a lot of that in here. If you pause, you're gonna, especially as we go on and we get more and more triggered, you can pause on some great scenes. It shows how you feel.
It does.
It shows up in your body language. And let's do a check now. How are you feeling? What's your body language like?
I feel a lot better than I did 10 minutes ago. I'm very I've still got the head fog. I'm still very but I find I'm still inspired. The way I just spoke before was completely authentic. It didn't feel forced. I'm being very patient with myself because I know that I'm a little out of sorts at the moment.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. And I think for me, one key takeaway from just everything you just said there that I would love to dive deeper on is the fact that, so you studied science at university, and I think, at least in my circle, I know a lot of people who have been in situations where, they'll study a particular degree, whether that is a science degree or anything, Because I think oftentimes around the age of when we're starting university or starting something after school, often people don't know what it is they want to do. And so what they do is they'll make an executive decision based on the conditioning of, the people around them, but also a bit of their own, intuition as well about what they want to do. But then often, more times than not, what happens is you sort of discover yourself a bit more as you enter your early 20s, and then you sort of...
I just feel like we're so serious.
We are so serious, but can I just say, this is really hard. So this is something that's been really, hard for me recently to witness myself in, because I speak quite objectively here. In reality, and what I've realized through a lot of work I've done on myself recently is that I am projecting my own experiences as objective truth. It's really bad. I'm sitting here saying, and I do use kind of vague terms. Often I was people often go through uni and then feel like they don't know what they want to do, whatever. But I'm actually, when it comes down to it, I'm actually just sharing my own personal experience, but then putting it in an objective context to sort of carry the message. And that's almost a defense mechanism, because I feel like I need to have this sense of security in my opinion. Otherwise, there's that fear of because I think through everything that I've been through in 2022 and the years prior, I definitely am someone who desires this security in terms of his own values and perspectives, but I compensate with that by projecting these objections instead of actually keeping myself a little bit more open. That might be quite harsh on myself and a bit extreme, but that's at least what I'm observing right now in the way I'm speaking. And it's hard to witness myself in this, but
I love how much you've grown in that though. Having that perspective at all, being able to see that is it's awesome.
Thank you.
Praise one.
Praise one. Praise one.
Praise one.
Because it was Monique's course. I should mention this actually. So Monique, our friend Monique, has a course called Living Limitlessly, and look, she'll explain the course better than I will. I think she always has to correct me when I explain it, so definitely double check. But pretty much where I'm at with the course is I'm unpacking my belief systems, and a lot of what that work involves is analyzing my defense mechanisms. And what it's done is it's revealed so much to me about why I might behave in certain ways. And it has completely humbled the absolute crap out of me in life, because I realized that a lot of my behavior that I thought was fine within my friendship groups and some other areas in my life were actually a result of my own projections and internal defense mechanism. So pretty much since doing that course, I'm very much in this state of I'm definitely a student to life, and it's going to continue being that way. But now I'm luckily in a state now where it feels empowering. It's cool, I get to work on myself. This is epic.
Yes.
So yeah, let's go. Even though I'm head foggy right now, let's keep going. Yeah.
I love it.
Not what happens is you sort of discover yourself a bit more as you enter your early 20s, and then you sort of realize oh, hey, I don't want to do, maybe this isn't what I want to do. But more often than not, people actually just stick to what they're already doing because they've spent so long building that. And I think there's this very conditioned thing in society where it's important to stick at things, and I think it can actually be quite dangerous, personally, I feel. And what I really admire about you is that you found yourself in a similar situation where you spent all these years studying at this degree, realizing that you actually want to explore your creativity a bit more. And almost without second thought, obviously there was a bit of, do I not? But to be honest, I was very shocked to hear how quickly you just decided to pursue those creative endeavors.
It's so interesting how people see you from the outside and how you feel. Because for me, this was not a quick decision. This was multiple years in the making, and this was me repressing the knowledge that this wasn't what I wanted to do in order to conform and in order to have security for 2.5 years and then longer. So for 2 years, I repressed that I wanted to do something different, and it built and it built and it built and it built to a point where it was so unhealthy and I was so unhappy. I wasn't going out and seeing many people. Like Luke knew me at this time. We talk about it in the podcast you're watching as well. Like I was not in a good place. And it was because I was completely resistant to my own inner voice. And that's why I also lost my intuition. That's another conversation. But I was so resistant because I wanted to do, firstly, it was because I wanted to keep my word to my family, I think, even though that's my own conditioning. But I was doing a double degree and it was impressive, and that's what I thought would be good for my career, but I didn't really enjoy it. And so it took me 2 years before it took me, I think 2 years before I went down to just a single degree. And then it took me another, I think, year or year and a half to break down my limiting beliefs and break down, not my limiting beliefs, my perspective, to the point where I could say, okay, it doesn't matter, even if I'm just doing one subject, I worked in it, I gave it a shot, this isn't what I want to do. And when I was finally able to do that, and it got to the point, like this is a conversation I had, an inner turmoil I had in myself for now at this point, like 3 years. You know, so even though like you see it from the outside, you're like, yeah, you had this thought and you're like, this isn't what I want to do, and then you changed. It's like, I knew this wasn't what I wanted to do in here, really. I knew for like at least 2 out of those 3 years that this wasn't what I wanted to do. And I resisted that to the point that it got so toxic for my own health that I showed up worse, that I was unhappy, that my capacity and my energy decreased. And it took me that long before I was able to make a change. And this was a question you asked yesterday. You were like, the day before, sorry, you were like, okay, should people wait that long? You know, like, should they wait until it gets to a bubbling point? And I'd like to iterate now because I think it's important. Please don't. Like it's not healthy. Don't do what I did. If it's something in your control to do, if you have the energy to make a different decision and the capacity to, please do. Make it earlier, because that resistance is so bad for your health. And as long as you're resisting something, either it's out of fear, you know, at which case it could be a resistance of what you really, I mean, it's always out of fear, but if it's a resistance of what you really want to do, and or it's a resistance just because of limiting beliefs and worried that you're not going to show up enough in that. So like you might be having resistance because you should stay or should leave, but please dissect that if you feel it, if you can, because the earlier you can change that without allowing it to build up like I did, the better for your overall health and your state of being. But also if it takes a while, it is what it is, you know, as well. Like, I wouldn't say that's healthy because it's not, but I don't want to like say that, but have more forgiveness for yourself as well, that you can only do what you can do to the best of your ability in that moment. And if you don't have the capacity and it takes you a couple more months or a year or 3 years like it did for me to build practices up that gain more capacity for you, that's okay. Like, good job for building the capacity to do that. Like, that's amazing. And so forgiving yourself for what you physically weren't or emotionally weren't able to do before, but you took steps and you're growing to a point at least to where you can, that's a win in my book. So
yeah, beautiful reflection. Yeah, 100%. I don't have much to add to that.
Okay. That's okay.
I remember asking you the question though about like why you let things, or like would you recommend letting things sort of bubble up? But yeah, it's super interesting actually to see that I came to that conclusion, and it was clearly so on the surface like what I see. Yet I was still so convinced that was the truth. Like, it's just, yeah,
we don't know what everyone's going through.
We don't know.
But yeah, I had an inner stress, and it's why I was so energy drained. I was tired all the time. And like right now, why am I tired? Because I've been battling a decision for the past 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So you know, like that inner turmoil drains so much of your energy.
It does. Big time.
And as long as you're out of alignment with that, like it won't magic away as much as we want it to, as much as I want it to. It won't just magic away where you're fighting something in yourself and you're like, oh, if I just give it time, it'll go away. Unless something happens in that time to make your opinion and beliefs change, it won't. And it builds, and it's not to scare you, because all of this, what we realize as we grow and we make these decisions, and you know, it can feel so hard. And like, yeah, it might be challenging. Like the fallback of a decision could be challenging. But if that's in alignment with you, over time, like you will become way happier than you would have if you continue to resist yourself. And I feel like, I know that's a certain statement, but I feel like I can say that with certainty, because as long as you're not in alignment with yourself and you're battling yourself, I've experienced that for so many years internally, and maybe it's different for you, but internally, that resistance depletes your energy and therefore your experience of life.
100%.
So,
yep.
As long as you're in alignment with yourself and not just your surface level beliefs, and this is what Luke and I were talking about as well, about we can be authentic in terms of our beliefs, but our beliefs might be misplaced. And as long as you're in alignment with the best version of yourself in that moment, like you will continue moving forward and towards a place where you have more inner peace. That sounded like Kung Fu Panda.
The Kung Fu Panda. Well, look, just a simple way. The simple,
inner peace.
Yeah. Well, the simple way I would put it is just like authenticity. Like this is the whole point of the U effect. Because when we are in true alignment with who we really are, what we really want to be doing, life does become a little more seamless, because we don't carry this weight of this subconscious knowing that we're not on the right path, or this fear and this feeling, you know, like, and you get more energy. Like recently I have been feeling like, even though I've got COVID right now, like I was still able to show up for this podcast. It honestly didn't feel like a chore. Right, it only feels like a chore when the technical issues kind of become a bit annoying, but that's because like the head's at its capacity. But like, yeah, and you know, oh God, I don't want this to sound weird, but like, you know, I consistently do probably like 40 hours plus of work each week between like my business and the U Effect, and I feels like I work less than when I did 20 hours a week at like Domino's, you know, like it's because like a lot of this stuff fills my cup. And yeah, I think like if people are able to lean into, and it's scary, it's fucking scary, because like the world, I feel, is designed at the moment, unfortunately, in a way that makes you feel like you have to do everything but what you want to do, right? And I feel like a lot of this comes from societal conditioning. And again, I don't feel like I'm projecting right now, because I've spoken to many people who are like have had this experience themselves. But yeah, like, you know, I felt this desire to quit athletics when I was younger, for example, to focus on my studying, even though athletics was what made me happy at the time. And then obviously I felt drained from studying, because I knew or like, you know, deep inside me, that's not what I wanted to do. So it starts early, you know, and then when we sort of go into that snowball of doing what the world wants us to do, we often find ourselves potentially in situations where, you know, our belief systems are like, oh, like I have to, like everyone has to do a grueling job to pay the bill. It's just like what every human has to go through, you know. I actually had a conversation with a friend literally yesterday about this. I was trying to be very gentle though, but like it was, yeah, they had the belief that, yeah, well, of course everyone has to sort of grind out and do something they don't like in order to, you know, do what they want. And I found that so interesting, and I had to be very careful, because I'm very fortunate where I'm in a place where my authenticity takes control. Like that's my number one value, right? And yes, like I fall flat on occasion, but generally speaking, I don't get drained doing what I do anymore. Like I might on occasion, because I'll sort of get out of alignment within something that I'm doing. But for the most part, I'm go time, baby. Like life's good, you know? And it's just interesting, yeah, to observe that. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. Sorry, a little spicy cough. to add to the mix.
Add some spice to
some
the
spice.
audio.
Yeah. Because you knew that something else was calling you. Whereas I feel like a lot of people really do struggle with that calling, because I think when you've already built something that works for you, and it's like there and it's like accessible, and you know, obviously you spent so much time building that thing, it can be so hard to depart from that. You know, for me, it was like filmmaking, right? Because it's like I built this whole business for myself, and it was like amazing and all that. But then I hit a wall last year where I was like, I don't want to be known as like the filmmaker. Like that's not a part of my identity. But then I almost felt an obligation to stick with that identity, because that's what I built for myself. And so I really admire that you just decided to throw yourself at creativity. So I'm just curious to know like what that transition felt for you, and sort of
No, that's really good. I think there's always more than meets the eye, right? So for me, that wasn't necessarily a fast decision. There was like a lot of growth that happened before that moment, right? Like a lot of confrontation, like a ridiculous amount of confrontation, like a lot of intense experiences that led to be able to reach that position for me, because I was so resistant to it. So the same thing, right? Like I knew I was always I always knew I wanted to have a business, but I didn't know how and what, and what I always felt I needed so much in order to do that. And what you were saying was very, very true. Like I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had zero idea. I went on a gap year, and I think that changed a lot of things for me personally. I know we've talked about this in the last podcast too, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating. But in my gap year, like I became so exposed to so many ways of living, and I became a lot more in tune, because I spent so much time with myself, traveling and meeting all these people and showing up like as authentically as I could in that moment to all these people. And I learned a lot about who I was and what I wanted to do. Sorry, I'm getting really drawn in my head right now. Here we go. So we talked about this at the start already, because I knew this was coming, but this is what we were saying, how because I was in a lower energy state, it meant that my internal defenses are also shut down. So when you're in a low energy state, it means that your ability to connect with intuitive speaking, so what you want to present, is far reduced, because all your doubts are so loud all of a sudden. It's really hard. Like, you know, when you feel low and you feel tired, you're more likely to have negative thoughts. It's the same thing when you're speaking. Like, even if someone asks you a question, your brain is working at 100 miles an hour because you're more up here instead of in here, right? And that's what we can see right here. So because I came in this with a more negative state, and as well, I think because there were parts of the conversation or some things that were said that made me go, ooh, and made me like second guess things. All of a sudden, like even this about uni, and that was, you know, a representation of what I went through, which like is fine. Like that's a really interesting thing to talk about if someone doesn't agree with that or they see it differently. Like that's fascinating. But when you're in this state, at least for me, that immediately took me, initially at least, straight into my head. And the more that happened, the less I was now in here, and the less capable I was to get back to here, because my mood was decreasing, or my energy was decreasing, sorry. And so in this, you can see all of those brain processes shutting down. like this is, you can see, it was so hard. It was like shifting through mud to figure out what I wanted to say. I remember it. And you can see everything breaking down here. So as well, because there was a pressure, right? There was an internal pressure, at least, to show up authentically, vulnerably, and in a way that would be a good representation of who I was as a human. And right now, that's not that. And so in my head, I was trying to battle that in order to show up like in the way I wanted to. But because that wasn't authentic, there was now internal turmoil. And therefore there was a breakdown, because suddenly I was thinking about how to overcome how I was feeling instead of feeling. And that's what you get here.
For those listening at home, you're about to get transitioned into 2 days ago. I hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast. I'm like acting as if we're concluding it. We're not. But the rest of the podcast you're about to listen to / watch gets really interesting. We start to really break down our defense mechanisms and because we start to get really triggered by each other, and you'll see it. And it's very interesting, the body language, just everything. You can see the whole mind working. So definitely stay tuned and watch if you can.
And the coffee cup comes back.
And the coffee cup, yes, the coffee cup.
With a defense mechanism
yes,
attached to it.
Yes. Anyway, enough of that. Enjoy.
I can edit things.
Yeah, I'm getting like really in my head. Anyway, let me just like breathe a second and then come back to it. Actually, here's another point, just separately. So you see, when I went to take a breath, I knew I needed to breathe and resettle my nervous system and get back in touch with myself. But here, I couldn't do it properly because there was still, as you were saying, how you want to make it an environment where you can pause properly, there was still that was really internal pressure, but of the external circumstance of like being on a podcast and being like, okay, if I really want to settle my nervous system, it's going to take me a couple of minutes to do this and like properly breathe. So I was really just trying to like damage control.
Shit. Well, how do you feel right now in this very moment?
Well, I feel a lot better than I did then, that's for sure. But no, feeling good. Because obviously, as you guys know, we had to stop and start. But I needed the refresh, so I'm good. As we said before as well, I'm just really happy to be present in this now that we've talked about authenticity and we've really covered on showing up authentically. I just feel a lot better to talk about it and uncover us, just like what we were doing. And I feel like it took a bit of pressure off having to restart, actually.
Oh, really? Yeah, awesome.
So for some reason, like maybe because obviously we're going to record the start again later, it just took some pressure off. So I'm feeling good to just come in and just see what,
let's do it.
See how deep we can go.
Woo.
Let's go.
Yeah, I'm taking a second before I can I feel like, sometimes it's hard for me to like get back into the energy because like I feel like we're in such a flow of conversation, and now I'm sort of like, I need to get back into it. But just a little bit, like, Yeah, just allow what comes up to come up. And when you want to comment, don't force it. But we got this. We got this. I'm excited to see all the fresh content, so. I'm scared now, because now I remember that it gets a bit interesting.
Well, this is when it degrades, right?
Degrade's such a strong word, though. Yeah, okay, maybe it's not a strong word.
Well, okay, what I mean by degrade, let me context that then. What I mean by degrade is this is when, from this moment, I'm now in my head and I'm not able to properly regulate myself. So from this moment, my ability to think and talk degrades is what I mean. And when we're conversing, this is when we start getting triggered. So it's really interesting, but this is when the dynamic starts becoming more introspective, I'd say, rather than from intuitive talking.
Yeah, wow, that was very well said.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%, yeah. Yeah.
So this is when it degrades in the sense that like the energy and the quality of conversation reduces from this point because of the place that we're coming from.
Yeah, it came from a place of, sorry. Yeah.
No, go on.
No, yeah, it came from a place of pressure because, like, you knew that you were in like a state of not being able to show up authentically, yet you were like, no, but I still need to show up for the podcast. I didn't create a space where you felt comfortable being authentic. And so there's a lot of like push action going on. And I think when we're acting from a place, just in anywhere in life, when we're acting from a place of push, then things start to like, happen that don't serve us. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, well, let's have a look.
Get ready for
Strap
that.
in, everyone.
And it means a lot, and to share, I want to do it justice. But we're good.
It's so good to be vulnerable as well. Like I want this to be a very vulnerable place. If people are comfortable sharing that moment of Oh, I lost my train of thought.
Oh, I feel so hypocritical watching that.
That's so interesting.
Because
Wow.
we're
So-
talking about how good it is to be vulnerable and be authentic, and I'm like, there's still things going on in my head I'm not sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I've observed, if you don't mind me sharing,
Yeah.
I was very much judging this past version of myself because I was just like obviously paying attention to like the objective way of speaking that I was speaking. But I'm very proud of myself that I actually opened and said, look, I want to allow people to be vulnerable in these podcasts, which means that like my intentions weren't completely in the wrong place at that time. Like I still had the fundamentals to be like, no, be vulnerable. So I'm actually like quite surprised.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. People that started their own businesses and made it happen, right? There was so many kinds of people that I met. People focused on family, people focused on work. And I came back to uni and I just wasn't the same. Like I started uni and I did not understand so many people that came like straight from school because the mindset is different. They know to continue, like all they're exposed to at that point in time is the achievement of grades and of, not all they're exposed to, but like in terms of an academic sense, it's always to gain a really good academic outcome, right? And it's to get through the steps, get through the year levels. And when you reach that, you're still on that journey of being exposed to just the conditioning of like, okay, it goes this step, then that step, then the next step, and then like I go to work, right? Like school, uni, work. And for me, once I was on a gap year, I was like, oh my gosh, but there's so much more that people find important. So I came back to uni and I knew that I was fascinated by the unknown. I was fascinated by space, particularly because there's so much we don't understand, and genetics because of the same thing. There were so many questions that hadn't been asked yet, and for me that was like, that plus space was so fascinating. So like you were saying, I did a double degree in genetics and aerospace engineering.
Yeah.
Got to second year coding and hated it, and I know we talked about this before, so I won't go into it too much, but ended up dropping that, which was a really difficult, took me 2 years, a really hard decision because of the value of that achievement would be so great. And that's what I had so much attachment to at that point.
Wow. Yeah.
So that was really hard for me. Letting go of that changed a pivotal part of who I was in that moment. And then from there, I did the genetics. I worked as a geneticist. I had that plan. I mapped out 50 years. I had connections in America. I was working as a space geneticist already in part. And letting go of that was the second thing that was really hard. And so that's where the year became the hardest year of my life last year. Because that whole year I was denying that I didn't want to do science as a job, at least at the moment, right? Like that, I realized, oh my gosh, this isn't giving me energy. The thing that started, I think, shifting a lot of my perspective of like, oh my gosh, okay, it's not hopeless, because it can feel hopeless. If that's what you plan for, and if that's what you do for such a long time, and you see your future in that, letting go of that can be so scary, not necessarily just because you have to do something else, but also because you don't know if there's anything else you want to do because you haven't explored. And that can be terrifying because if you let go of that, it's just a blank space. And if you worry of like, what if I never feel this and I never feel fulfilled? That's one of the biggest fears, right? Is feeling like, what if I live my life and I hate it? Like that sucks, right?
I love that. I think you actually spoke really well there. I feel like I think a lot of people like struggle with that, and I definitely struggled with that at one point. Like I remember, the reason I studied university for myself and continued with my degree was this unknowing of where I wanted to go, sort of pinpointing a direction I could go. And then it got to about 2 years in the degree where I was like, oh, I actually don't want to do this anymore, but I kept going because like what you said, the value of that achievement was something that I was very attached to, even though it wasn't actually serving me and doesn't serve me now. And I think you touched on something at the end there where you said like people are afraid of not knowing where they want to be, or something along those lines, right?
Not knowing if they'll ever find what they want to do. Right? So like living your life and trying so hard to find what's going to fulfill you and then not finding it. Like that would be the worst possible outcome in my brain. It's like if you go after it and then at the end of your life, you're like, nothing came out of this.
Yeah, and it's almost like a safety net to like pursue something, even if it doesn't align with you, because that's easier to cope with than exploring something but having no idea where you're going.
Yeah, and not knowing how it's going to turn out for you. And I guess that's where like trust comes in, right? Trusting that life is happening for you and following that path and having certainty in that, like we were saying before. And so letting go of that was really scary and really hard, but the glimmer of hope for me, and I think this came to just wanting to try lots of things and being willing to get out of my comfort zone to do things that I felt even just a little bit drawn to, was when we went and filmed people and asked them on the street questions about what they wanted to do.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I was like, I had wanted to do that for so long, but I was scared to do it myself. And like, but we finally went out and we're just like, just do it. And we filmed these people. And it was the first time I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting energy from this. Like I want to keep going. And I hadn't felt that in the work that I had been doing. And I hadn't felt that in such a long time. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can get energy from something. Like that, you know, that's crazy. Like I can receive energy.
Yeah.
I don't just have to like drain and then sleep and then come back, right? And so after that, I think that really opened up my mind to being like, oh, okay, there is another direction that I feel drawn to, and it's not this. Now, there's still a lot of work to do. I was still really attached to this, and letting go of that was like terrifying to me because of the 50-year plan kind of mindset. But when I was tired enough, when I was like worn out and burnt out enough, I finally admitted that, okay, this is not what I want to do. And we've had this conversation, I am sorry. But like that triggered the change for me to, once I finally admitted that and let go of that, to really, be like, okay, it's possible I can refocus my attention.
Yeah.
And once my awareness shifted and I let go of all that attachment of what would happen if I changed my mind, the freedom the next day, and from then, right, then on, it's been so much more freedom of like, oh my gosh, okay, what comes my way, I'm allowed to follow. And so that's changed a hell of a lot for me. And since then, I started looking for opportunities that would get me closer to what I wanted to do and I felt drawn to do, instead of just chasing and grinding out this pathway that I really didn't want to do.
Yep.
Now that led me to UCLA, that led me to my exchange, that led me to doing things that I was always scared to do. And as part of my degree, I was like, I don't want to do another 4 science subjects on this. I've already done 3-4 years. I know that this is not what I want to do. I want to move into spaces that are going to grow me. Of course, that was a lot of fun, but it did grow me a lot, because going there ended up being such a catalyst for the business, which was wild. And everything started happening organically. And that was the thing I think that made it so easy, and why you're like, oh my goodness, that like shift was so simple. And like, you know, you just kind of like, and it feels that way, it's insane. But you're like, oh my gosh, you went from not doing anything in this space and not knowing anything to just like, each new shoot I'm doing is like so dramatically different. It's insane. It's wild. But like, it's like a step up every single time. And it's so at ease. And it's because I started letting go of like, oh, it has to be this way. And like, even with the videography, it's like, okay, well, we'll see, we know where this goes. I can only prepare for success the best way that I can. Which means like, you know, it means, okay, if in order to do that, do I need to learn like these skills, or do I need to free up my schedule and my brain so that I can take in opportunities and have the time to do that? Before UCLA, like, are there things that I need to like complete and tick off? And you know what's crazy? How quickly new challenges develop.
Yeah.
like I'm watching this back and I'm like, yeah, this was a great moment. Like, although obviously I was going through a lot right now, like I had my own challenges in this stage of my life. Professionally, I took on so many more challenges once I moved to not even when I moved to Adelaide, but even before that, I started taking on the retreat business and building that up. And now I'm in a space right now where I'm trying to figure out this year's layout in order to make everything happen. And already there are so many other challenges and internal battles that I've had to figure out what's next. So I'm looking at this and I was like, oh, that wasn't such a bad problem to have.
Isn't it? Like, yeah. Hindsight's 2020, yeah.
But at the time, that was like at my capacity. Like I was at my limit. And right now, like I understand how to deal with that situation a lot more because I've learned. And so obviously it frees up the space for me to go deeper into challenges that I haven't been able to face yet. And of course, it's not just like an endless cycle of despair. Like, you know, I don't want to make it out to be like that because it's amazing. Like when you tackle something and you have enough space to tackle something deeper over time, like in each time also, but also over time, you'll feel it more and more and more, that it allows you to be authentic more naturally and more frequently. And that's incredible. And then you'll find greater rewards and opportunities come from that too, right? So although the challenges may seem harder, they probably provide the same amount of stress that your previous challenges did. It's just overcoming those will give you even greater opportunities and rewards. But yeah, I was looking back at that and I was like, wow, it's just such a different space that I was in compared to now. Very different challenges.
Yeah, what I like to compare it to is like when you used to go throughout school when you were younger, right? So you'd go from grade 6 to grade 7, you get given all these new assessments, and it's literally like the upgraded version of what you did the previous year. It's like if we just did grade 6 every year, yeah, we'd get so good at doing grade 6 and life would be easy, but that's not how life works. The natural way the universe works is it'll throw new challenges towards your way that you weren't previously able to face. And it's like this constant like upgrade. It's growth. Like you don't grow from doing grade 6 work every year until you beat everyone at it. Like you grow through doing the next upgraded thing, I guess, if that even makes sense. So yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, something that I love, and I wanted to let that simmer for a bit, what you were saying in the podcast, because I love what you said. Now, my mind is going blank. I'm going to be real.
That's okay.
Maybe it's just not meant to come out right now, so let's continue. Unless you had another point.
No, we can continue.
All right, let's do it.
Or admit to myself or do certain work so that I have the capacity to allow what comes to come. You know, so I really strongly, a motto of mine this year has been to prepare for success the best way you can. And it doesn't mean having control over everything, you don't, but it means doing what you can in a healthy way to the best of your ability to allow space for your, like what you want to manifest to come into your life, right? And that means your own mindset, and that means your own like situation in life and what you've done. So that's been a really big motto of mine, and that's what's enabled with all of this and with that preparation of my mindset of like, you know, it will be what it will be. I will allow myself to follow new pathways. That when I came to UCLA and someone saw my work and said, I really like that, can you do something for me? I was like, I mean, sure. Like, there's nothing holding me back. If you like it, let me set up an ABN. Let me get, you know, let me contact Luke and ask prices. Like, let me figure this out. And like for sure, we can do it tomorrow. And then like, I did it. And then someone saw that and was like, I really like that. Like, can you do something for me? And I was like, okay. And they were like, can you film something for me? And I was like, sure. I didn't tell them that I'd never filmed anything before, but I was like,
just instant, yeah.
Yeah, I was like.
You know, I actually remember what I was going to say now. Something.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So what I found very valuable from that line of conversation you had is you were talking about like how doing that part of study that you were doing, like you felt more drained, like you felt more tired, like I feel like a lot of people gain value from this because some people don't know potentially how to identify what it is that makes them, you know, come alive. Because I think it gets so twisted in today's world sometimes. I feel like where it's so interesting. There it is again. It's so interesting. Because I think people live their life with so many different values and approach, and I keep using Andrew Tate as an example because to me, he's just a very interesting character. Not saying that I like agree with like all the stuff he says, but just he's just a very interesting character, and what he does that I find really interesting is that he kind of preaches this idea of like a man's job in life is to be disciplined and to take on the hunch of the world, and like, you know, a man shouldn't feel happy, a man should feel proud, a man should do what has to be done, not feel emotions, not feel happy, whatever. And I think with these extreme viewpoints and all of this, I think it gets twisted sort of like what we're meant to feel in life. Like, people don't know what the goal of how to feel should be. I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. And I think because of that, at least I'm at least talking from personal experience, like, I didn't know what kind of feeling I wanted to chase, if that made sense. Like, I think naturally, like dropping athletics, for example, to pursue my studies in year 11 and 12, that came from a place of feeling like, oh, like I need to focus on studying because studying is what's actually going to give me money in the future, and that's going to tick off that feeling of what I thought was accomplishment and whatnot, and that sense of pride. But like, I actually feel like, I'm blanking again, man. Oh no.
That's okay. Have a think about it. I can pick up a little bit. From there, I think people live their lives with a lot of conditions, right? Like a lot of expectations and conditions. And in terms of feeling what gains us energy, you are so right. Like, we don't have that experience all that often. At least a lot of people don't. I didn't. And I think you're so right. Like, that is something we really struggle to do, because people talk about finding your purpose and finding your passion and all of that. But it can be really difficult to do that. You know, I found it really difficult. I'm still on a journey to find that. And in terms of discovering what gains you energy, because I think that could be a slight shift in perspective that could really help people, is recognizing that instead of finding like your purpose or what you're best at or where your passion lies, because those are buzzwords, but what do they mean? What do they feel like? Maybe there should be a shift in perspective of what will give you energy, like what fills you up, because we also hear that, but we don't know what it means. But what it feels like is gaining energy. It feels like you do something for an hour and then you only plan to do it for an hour, but you want to do it for another 2 once you start it. It means that you started something tired, and then once you do it after 30 minutes, suddenly you're more awake. Like, it's something, right? It's something that gives you energy. And if it gives you energy, then that's something you can do sustainably and consistently, and you enjoy it. And if you love it and it aligns with all of your values, which you set your values, and that's a really important thing to understand, then that is something that I'd recommend worth pursuing. And to find what gives you energy, at least for me, that all came down to trying new things. It came down to getting outside my comfort zone. It came down to, you know, filming, like I said in this podcast, filming with you on the street and recognizing, oh my gosh, finding what lights people up, lights me up. And suddenly I recognize something that gave me energy, and I'm still on a journey to find all the other things that will as well. But all of us, not all of us, so many of us live our lives drained and thinking that's normal.
Yes.
And thinking that's okay.
That's perfect. And that really helps me pick up to where I was going with what I was saying. Because my ultimate point was actually that we overcomplicate it so much.
Yeah.
Like, you know, at the end of the day, as just a really basic framework that I know has worked for both of us, leaning into things that actually give you energy as opposed to draining you is literally, if you use that as a guiding sort of map in your life, that's actually a resource to finding your authenticity as well. Because a lot of people will say things like, oh, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I want to take things. Maybe I feel like could be a good step is just start by like you said, feeling, okay, what actually gives me energy? Recently, I've been finding like my sleep actually hasn't been the greatest recently. However, I feel like I have had the most energy I've ever had in a long time. And it's because I'm consistently doing all these videos for the You Effect, and everything just feels very seamless at the moment, right? I'm like working more hours than I've ever worked in my life. But again, it just feels like it feels right. Whereas I'm noticing like I'm having these interactions with people, like particularly in my family, where it's always a conversation of like, oh, I feel really tired, like I don't have energy for today. And often it's people who feel stuck in doing something they don't want to be doing. Now, of course, people are in situations where they have to like take care of a family, or they have to, support someone. And so they feel like they have to do that job. And, there are some situations that require you to do that. I get it. But like, I think just as a basic framework, just leaning into things that do give you that spark and that energy is like such a beautiful way to, discover like, and the thing is, and this is why like limiting beliefs have been such an interesting topic for me. And that's why I think I asked you this question in the podcast, because the thing that amazed me about you is that you were like so deep into that university degree that you were doing, right? And like being in a similar position, like I wanted to quit after 2 years, because after like it felt fulfilling and seamless and great for 2 years, the university degree. But then it started feeling like a push energy, like I was getting more drained, like I don't actually want to do it. But I kept going because I felt like I needed to finish, like I just felt, I had the conditioning of being like, I need to finish what I started, yada, yada, so that people wouldn't be disappointed in me. What Niesha did is she sort of actually sat with that feeling. She was like, actually, this doesn't give me energy. And then she then lent into something which, from the outside in is like way riskier. And like, most people would sort of be like, why would you do that? Like, that's so silly. However, now, after a year or two, I mean, you could probably speak on this more, but at least from my perspective, it seems like you're in a much more energized state. You feel like you're in more alignment. Like, you seem happier than you did. Because I kind of knew you, like, around that time, and you seem way happier than you were then.
Oh yeah. The happiness level has definitely increased. But I mean, that's very nice of you to say. I think it took me a few years to, like, I allowed it to build. I really was wrapped up in the conditioning, and I allowed it to build for 2.5 years, I think. And then I had a breaking point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I felt it declining on my health. I felt it declining, well, on everything. At the same time as well, I was going through a lot of really heavy relationship stuff, which I haven't talked about publicly yet. But that was really intense, and that was draining as well. And then family conversations of expectations were draining. And it just built to a point where I couldn't do it anymore. And I started reaching out to communities that I really valued. So the Feel Good Dips in Melbourne, and where it's like gatherings of people that were prioritizing their wellness and their well-being. And when I started seeing those people and doing that, I started gaining a little bit more of the capacity to make harder decisions and to change what I was doing. And it honestly, as I said in this, it really just, I allowed things to build to a bubbling point. Like, I really did, a boiling point, to the point where it was either change or let this like consume my life, where I don't think I can get back out of that. And so, yeah, so like you say it, like, it was like it's like I just felt it and I changed. But no, I really let it build for a few years. And It took me to some really dark places, which is why the year was the hardest year of my life. It was constantly difficult in the relationship I was in and in my university degree, and doing something I knew I didn't want to do, but feeling trapped in it. And so, it started with small changes. Small. The first one was changing my degree from a double to a single degree. And then from there, it was investigating wellness. And then I was able to shift a lot of what I was doing from there. Once I started recognizing that something gave me energy and I found that, I was like, okay, now I'm making an active decision that I want to follow this instead. So yeah, it's all a journey for everyone. And I think it might look nice on the outside in, but like, yeah, it was also really, really tough for me too, as I'm sure it is for everyone going through that, you know?
Yeah, well, you've just shown me the importance of conversation because, you know, it can be really easy to see something from the outside. All I saw from my perspective was, I remember that day we went to Two Birds, One Stone, and you were going through a lot. I don't know if you remember that, but you're like, life was hitting you hard.
Yeah.
And just remembering that Niesha and then just knowing sort of where you were in life in terms of uni and stuff to like where you are now, like I saw the easy, like, oh, she's there now, she's here. But of course, there would have been challenges on the way. And it was good. Thank you for sharing that and like, you know, giving people that reminder that, hey, it's like not an easy thing. Would you just quickly before we continue? So you said that you like let it bubble up intentionally, which I think happens.
Not intentionally.
Well, not intentionally. Okay. Well, because yeah, like you mentioned, like you would have had to make small or like discover yourself in small ways before you can make a big decision. I guess what I was gonna ask was like, would you recommend bubbling it up, or is that just something that happened? But I think you just answered that.
I mean, no, like if you can prevent it from getting to that point because ultimately, right, what's your end goal? What does that look like? Who do you want to be? And then if you can make decisions to get you closer to that as early as possible, amazing. Like I would 100% recommend doing that. Like why wait on your life and why wait on your future, right? For me, I was so wrapped up in people pleasing, expectations, fear of abandonment, and a bunch of other ones probably, that I was holding on to the safety of my conditioning and not branching out into my authenticity, right? And it was a constant, what made it so hard wasn't even what I was doing, because we can all do things, right? Like writing an essay, it isn't necessarily, that on its own without the emotional strain isn't necessarily hard. It's writing words. Yes, you might write a bad essay, but it's just writing words. What's hard about it is the internal struggle, right? That's what makes it really difficult. It's the voices in your head going, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. And then the energy you're spending forcing yourself to do it. That is what's exhausting. And so for me, at that time, pretty much every minute of every day for multiple years of my life, I was in a constant struggle in my brain, a constant battle of knowing that this isn't what I want to do, but then forcing myself to do it anyway because it's what I thought I had to do. And it's not even that, like that in and of itself is almost an excuse, I think, for me. It's just holding on to that safety and choosing not to see it. That being said, we only have a certain amount of capacity, right? And I'd suggest, you know, not falling back on that as an excuse and seeing what you can do and pushing yourself, but not breaking yourself. But for me, at that time, I don't think I had the capacity because I didn't understand how to deal with these emotions. I didn't understand how to regulate my system. I didn't understand how to rely on other people, how to ask for help. There were all these tools that I didn't know how to use to increase my capacity. I didn't think to be in grass more even. like you know, it's just all these things that help you regain energy and therefore regain capacity to deal with things that are draining your energy. But yeah, I didn't know at the time, and that's why I was stuck for so long until I started developing and understanding some of these tools and even small subtle changes of expansion. It could be reading a book that's like, you know, a really, I was about to say high energy book, which makes sense to me, but like it's a book that is inspiring and it speaks from the right place, right? When you read something like that, it gives you energy. Or listen to a podcast, it gives you energy. I was doing a lot of those two things in those couple of years. I was listening and reading to a lot. That's what I had the capacity for. Or it's doing the meditations and doing the breath work and doing the yoga and going out in nature, which I had less capacity for at that time, but I have more now. yeah, that feels good. I'd love to do that. New experience, exciting. It's part of this business that I've set up. I've got my ABN. Let's go. And then it just kept going from there. And I was able to build it, you know, start it in 2 different states. Like when I came back to Australia, it was so easy for me to, like, it wasn't so easy for me. I just cold called a bunch of people. It's the one skill that I've had, and I was like, oh my God, it's finally coming in handy, is networking. And so all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, yay, it's coming in handy. I can, at least for me, it's a skill that I've built up, is being able to talk to people and connect with people. And so I just reached out to lots of people and was like, hey, this is what's happening in my life. This is my situation. I would love to film something. I'll give you a deal. And I had some people reach out and things started building. And then it's just been accepting what feels right and allowing the space and the freedom to do that. And it's just kept going. And yeah, I don't know if that answers your original question.
No, it definitely does.
But
no, it opens up a massive can of like talking points as well. Because I think the beautiful takeaway from your story and everything you just shared, at least for me, is like the beauty of human curiosity. And but also I feel like it's such a natural part of our human conditioning, but I think slowly things are changing where the curiosity is almost being diminished a bit, because I think a lot of people, and like I got told this going into year 12, like don't take a gap year, like go straight into uni.
Really?
Yeah, no, I got told, my parents told me that, like everyone at school, because they were like, you're gonna take a gap year, then you're not gonna want to go to uni. But it's funny. but it's funny they say that, because they say that like it's a negative thing. But what it is like going on a gap year and just experiencing life without others' influence on you is actually such an important part of people's development, because I think it enables you this space for your inner child to come out, where instead of, because schooling, like, you know, I think schooling has benefits and disbenefits. I think it's a flawed system, but it's still good in some ways. But I think allowing yourself to explore and to be curious, that's actually where you find yourself. And I think that's actually a big reason to why so many people in their early 20s or really late teens are just so lost. It's because they feel like they don't allow that curiosity to happen. And I think what I really loved with how you spoke was that things weren't easy, but they were more seamless, and like opportunities came your way because you were true to what felt right for you. And I feel like it's very common for us to ignore what feels right to us, because that other voice of you should be doing this is so strong. But I can vouch, like, you know, like as soon as I decided to follow what my heart wanted to do, things naturally started, like the right people came into my life, and saying it like this sounds like, well, how does that even work? But it's just one of those things you can't describe. Like when you are in alignment with where you're meant to be, things will fall into place for you. And I think there's always this fear and this limiting belief around doing the thing that you want to do. It's like, how is this going to happen? How is this going to work? And I think your story is a perfect example of how things have fallen into place, because you've decided to pursue something that's actually closer to your authentic being.
yeah.
Just want to pause it there. That was so interesting to observe. For the most part, like I was speaking really well, but then I noticed something, and this is something I've been noticing within myself a lot, and it's been a big theme for me. It's like I was getting really passionate, really enthusiastic, and that flame that I always talk about came out, where it's like that passion. But then sometimes, and I've said this in a U-Effect video, where, you know, sometimes that flame can burn, and you have to be very careful about how you convey the passion, because I started then speaking like kind of what I hope we talk about tomorrow, and that we did talk about earlier, about how sometimes I fall into this very conviction type of speaking, where I'm like, this is objectively true. I was like, people in their early 20s and late teens feel lost a lot of the time, which is like,
I didn't notice that.
Well, which is like, you know, it's true. Like it's, you know, it's common for sure. But like, it was definitely a projection of how I felt more than anything. It was like, I felt lost in my late teens and early 20s. And like, I'm sure it's common, but there wasn't any real grounds for me to say that. It literally just came from my own
experience, and it was just so fascinating, like seeing it in retrospect, because like genuinely, like this happens when, you know, I think maybe it's just me who does this, but when I get like really enthusiastic about a subject and I just feel really energized, I have to be really careful, because then I might misarticulate or it's like almost that I get impulsive with how I say things, and I get caught. Actually, I don't even know what this is. And this is where I'm like, I have so much room for growth, because like I see that, and then I see that I'm starting to say things very convictingly, even though, and when I say that in a negative way, because I feel like it lacks, when I speak with conviction in certain moments, it lacks the openness to it being something else, and I don't know what that is at the moment.
Interesting. That's really cool. I actually didn't notice that, and it's
Yeah.
great observation skills on your part and like self-observation. That's really cool. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's just awesome. I like that. But it was.
I'm just hyper aware
No, but
of
you're
myself.
right, because it's interesting. But when we get really passionate about something, right? I mean, you imagine that when you're, and I'm going to use this word, don't take this word the wrong way, but
Buzzword
when
incoming.
you like channel yourself, right? You channel your authentic self. When you get really passionate, you allow your authentic self to just come to the surface and come out of your mouth. And what I mean by channel is like, you know, when you speak and you get really passionate and you can just say stream of consciousness without thinking about it too much, and it just comes naturally, and you finish and you don't even know really what you said. I imagine that's like channeling your innermost self straight out, right? So I'd say that's when you get passionate and you're not filtering yourself as much, I'd imagine that what's coming out of your mouth are your core beliefs.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'd imagine what's coming out is what you authentically believe.
At least at that time, yeah.
At that time, right? Like, of course, we all change and we adapt, and this is the part of self-growth. Like, part of it is of recognizing what our current belief systems are, and then of adapting the ones which don't serve us, right? But it's really interesting when you say this, because yeah, just like seeing like that, like that's part of it, right? Like, this is your authentic self coming to the surface at that point in time. And so then when you say now, you were like, I don't want to mispronounce anything, like misspeak anything, right? What are you misspeaking? You're misspeaking what you believe should be said.
Oh, it's so fast.
Right?
Yeah.
But you're still saying what you truly believe. So I think the change shouldn't, or the focus shouldn't be on changing what you're saying, and of being able to stop yourself before saying anything faster. Like, I don't think that should be the focus. That's the Band-Aid. The focus should be on what are your core beliefs, which is what you've been doing. What are your core belief systems? And then what ones do you align with and what ones don't you align with? And then changing that. Because that means that when you do speak from a place of passion, what is coming out of your mouth is aligned with what you want to come out of your mouth, because your beliefs are aligned.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's that Band-Aid system, which a lot of the self-development industry is, and it does, and it profits off of Band-Aiding, right? Of providing so many short-term solutions, or not even short-term, just things that fix surface level problems. But when you want to fix the deep stuff, that's not going to last, because the deep stuff will always come out, right? And you can only Band-Aid, we only have capacity and energy to Band-Aid ourselves for so long before we need to really deal with the injury itself, or like, you know, the core belief system itself. So it's just, yeah, it's fascinating, but good job for picking that up. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but yeah, it's just I'm in an interesting space at the moment where I've realized, and I've said this a lot, but like I just feel very humbled by life at the moment, and just knowing that I carried so much defense mechanisms that I wasn't aware of. I'm now actually, and if I'm being completely vulnerable with everyone, I'm in a place now where I'm hyper aware of myself. Well, not hyper aware, but I'm trying to be hyper aware, which feels like a bit of a burden, because now when I look at myself, I'm like being very critical and judgmental of myself, because I'm being because, you know, I think a value of mine is being attentive and compassionate. And when I hear myself speak the way I was just speaking, I don't see that. I see someone who's passionate, which I love, and people. I see this, and this is turning into a therapy session with you, Niesha. But I'm just really curious to hear what you think of this, because I don't believe people should dim their light. I think, but maybe, but I feel that way because I know how it feels to dim the light, to dim your light, and it's not a nice feeling. I feel like everyone should be given the opportunity to just express their authentic self because it's the best feeling ever. But then I see moments of myself where I'm in that moment of I'm not dimming my light, but then what if it becomes destructive in some capacity? And it has been that within some of my friendships and my relationships.
Yeah. What made it destructive?
I guess within this, there was that fear of saying that because I was saying with such conviction, like, yeah, people in their early 20s and people in their late teens feel lost. I guess I have this fear about people reading into that being like, oh, or like me saying that's, I think it's destructive when I'm saying, yeah, it's hard. Again, this is where I'm sort of trying to be vulnerable and unpack this, because maybe it's just this fear of what others think of me. But I guess with the destruction, it would be, I feel like I have a response. I think naturally, and both of us being in the position that we're in, we do have people who potentially admire our viewpoints on life and gain a lot from what we have to say. And I feel like a degree of responsibility comes with that. And so when I'm sitting here and I'm saying things with such conviction, I almost feel a bit of shame when I look back and it's like not particularly true in its full essence, because then I'm like, well, people are going to look into that and it's not going to be true. And I don't want people to formulate beliefs from a place of me doing a defense mechanism rather than, you know what I mean?
Yeah, interesting. I think you need to be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
For one, like the thing is, I'm just going to get out of the slide. There we go. The thing is, when it comes to, let me just get out of that for you, so it's not a line across my face.
Again, just for the people listening at home and people watching this, the whole point of this podcast, just to reiterate, is to really just get vulnerable about where we're at in our life, and reflecting on this is going to bring up a lot for us. And I just felt very weirdly about how I just spoke, even though it's probably just like a fear response. But yeah, it's nice to be able to have a conversation openly about it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I've fixed my camera. Yeah, so I think how you said, I really applaud you for saying all of that. So firstly, thank you. And then secondly, be kinder to yourself. I think everyone, it's also a lesson for myself lately as well, to be kinder and more forgiving, because we only know what we know at a certain point in time. And everyone is human. No one is perfect. Everyone has to learn. So challenges and growth like this, and going back and seeing where you've changed, is an amazing thing, because you can recognize that you have grown, you know? So I think that is all, it's all good. This is all good in our development. In terms of being destructive with your passion, I think showing up as your most authentic self and in alignment with that and with passion should never be dimmed. I think, at least from my current perspective and what I've seen, I would never dim that, because I think that's incredible. If that triggers people in their own defense mechanisms, that's not your business. You can help, but that's not your business. It's not your responsibility. Which is hard, because people don't want to do that because they want to people please, and you want to hold on to those relationships, and you don't want to hurt anyone. And there's all these things, but by doing that, you're also showing people how to be authentic and be in your passion, and that you can live like that. And so, yes, it might trigger people, but it also reveals to them where their triggers are and where they can show up more and how they can be in their own authenticity. So I don't think it's a bad thing, personally, to be in that space. when it becomes destructive, now this is a really interesting point you've made, because I've never thought of that as potentially being destructive, but if it's coming from the wrong place, as you said, like from your defense mechanisms and your triggers, and then confusing that with your authentic self, then yeah, I can imagine how that becomes destructive. That's what a lot of people do. They get really convicted, as you were saying before, it's about their convictions. They get really convicted about something and passionate about it, where they put a lot of belief and probably some of their identity into it, and then they can speak on it with such energy and passion, but it's coming from the wrong place. So the message that they're speaking out is going to convince people that don't have their own values and convictions set of something that might not be helpful for them down the line. So I can see where that can become destructive, and I suppose that comes down to a personal responsibility over time. And when you mess up, to have more forgiveness, otherwise you'll hold on to what you're not enjoying about yourself. But to separate what you value and where your authentic self is from where your powerful beliefs are that you don't value. And I think just doing that work to separate them over time, when you speak with passion, it will only come from the place of authenticity, right? Which is aligned with you. But I think that's a journey, and I haven't pondered that all that much. So those are my thoughts on it at the moment, at least.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, again, this opens a whole nother can of worms that I think for another conversation, but like, yeah, it's very actually, we might have to have that conversation later. It's very curious.
For sure. I'm really interested by talking about that more, because it's opened up some thoughts for me that I hadn't really considered yet. And I was like, oh. Well, yeah, just. So this is, I was like,
sorry.
Yeah, go.
I was just going to say, just to glaze over the surface of it. Just because I feel like that there have been times where I was so convinced I was speaking from a place of like true authenticity and passion. And it was actually in alignment with my values at the time. And it was, therefore it's authentic, no? But then in retrospect, my values have shifted since then. And the way I was passionately talking in the past in that situation was actually destructive. And then, and that's where I get confused, because I'm like, well, I was being authentic and destructive, or was it not destructive and I just feel destructive because someone got hurt because of my actions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, interesting.
We could put a pin in that, perhaps.
I think we're going to have to talk about that and like ponder it a little bit more, because it opens up such a can of worms, as in like authenticity. What is that? It was like, and the core of that, and of values and redefining them, and when is a value good and when is it bad. Like it brings up all of this, which is really, really powerful, and I love. But this is how, by the way, I think this is really useful for people just in general. This is how our conversations start a lot of the time as well.
Yeah,
like
all
we'll
the time.
talk about something, and then it will bring something up, and we'll be like, oh, interesting. And then we question it, and we go down this rabbit hole, and we find out more about ourselves. So like that's, like you're seeing right now, we'll come back to this later.
Yeah, you're witnessing growth right now. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a lot to be said for that. I think, like, in part, like we say we can't describe it, and like if you're like me and part of your brain is like, but science, you go.
Please, give the scientific reason.
No, like there's all sorts of things, right? Like there is, of course, energetically, like the law of attraction, right? The more like there have been some studies done, but like, the more the law of attraction, like what you give is what you get. A big part of that, at least in science, is your reticular activating system, which I can't remember if we talked about it or not. But
no, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Even if it's something we've spoken about, I invite you to retell it. Because not many people would have probably seen that. So.
Yeah, for sure. So the reticular activating system is a part of your brain that filters the information that comes in from the outside. So if you've trained your brain, which it may not have been your complete control as a child, a lot of us have a lot of conditioning. All of us have a lot of conditioning. Your reticular activating system determines what's important based on your beliefs and based on your mindset. And it filters, because you take in so much stimuli from the external world, right? Like you do not process in your own brain like every single thing that's happening consciously. Like you cannot imagine everything that's going on. And so what your brain does is, the reticular activating system does, is it takes all this information and it filters out what it deems, not important to you. And it allows in what it deems is important to you, which is based on your mindset and your beliefs, right? Based on your conditioning.
Just real quick, I have to say, listening to you say this now, I freaking get it. I get it. Because this is what I'm learning through Monique's course. But
Yeah.
at the time, I bet you I'm sitting there going, sure. But it seems like, but it sounds simple what you're saying. It's like, yeah, your brain filters information, duh. But yeah, like you're saying and like you're going to explain, we don't have to over contextualize it. But it's like, it literally, I just think that the point that really stands out is the fact that it's your core beliefs and whatnot that are the determining factor of what it takes in and what it leaves out.
Yeah, and it's always stuck with me. But isn't it fascinating? Like we can literally control based on just our beliefs, right? What we value and what we believe. We control what our brain deems as an opportunity for us. Right? Like it's insane. So that's why when you're in alignment and you're acting in accordance with your values and your beliefs and what you want to happen, your brain will find, if we talk about this, you can skip it, but your brain will find everything that can help you get what you want. And it will tell you that information. If you're fighting your values and beliefs, or your values and beliefs are misplaced, then you will not be given as many of those opportunities because your brain will filter those out as not important because that's not where your focus is. It's just crazy, yeah.
Guys, I want you to really soak in what Niesha just said right now. No, because seriously, if you can harness this ability, it can be such a powerful resource in your life. I'm going to share a story right now. I feel like it's important to share with people.
Do it.
Like, I've always been somewhat conscious of this idea. I recently had a day. Now, generally speaking, I'm a pretty positive person, optimistic person. And because of that, I tend to attract some really beautiful things and blessings in my life because of that mindset. It keeps me open to the opportunities. I had one day recently, a couple weeks ago, where I was feeling particularly like not great on this day. And it's just so fascinating. And it's mainly due to financial situations. I ended up being flat broke on this particular morning and I had no conscious pathway of how to get out of it. But I just noticed within that morning, I was noticing so much negative stuff that I just wouldn't have noticed. Like there was a fence and it had graffiti on it and it said something like, I don't want to be here in this fake world. And it hit me different. I was like, oh my God, I feel that today. I would not have noticed that sign if I was having in a good mood. And it's because at that time I had this way of thinking that ended up being this thing where my brain would only then receive information that sort of backed that way of thinking. I'm talking about this not with the best words, but I think you guys are picking up what I'm saying. And it was so interesting. I was so aware of that, where I was like, nah, screw this. Because normally, just to be completely transparent with you all, when it comes to finances, I tend, if I'm not doing well financially, my brain wants to resort to this fear-based mindset of like, and this victim mentality of like, God, like I'm here again, like why is life so hard, whatever. On this particular day, I was then very much like, all right, let's change this. Let's look for opportunities. Tried so hard to stay positive. And funnily enough, and to be completely transparent, like the pressure still built. I was feeling very stressed that day, but then I took a moment to like meditate, to just like truly just get back into myself. Meditation and breath work is a resource that I use personally to get to that state. That's a whole nother conversation of different resources we can use to get to our truest essence. And then what actually happened is I literally just felt inspiration, random inspiration, to scroll through my contact list, just see who I've got on my phone. I won't say the person, but one of my clients for my freelancing business came up. And I just decided to call them. I'm like, I don't even know what I'll say, but I'm going to call them. And then through that phone call, I was able to create a deal with this client for them to pretty much pay for all these videos that they want throughout the year up front. And
it worked, and they were super happy to do that. So I ended up making $5,000 that one day because I decided to like see the opportunity in what was in front of me. And that's like a clear example of like when you're able to harness the ability to change what your core beliefs are and change, I hate saying these buzzwords, like change your mindset. But like literally it's like look for there's opportunities all around you, but you have to be open and ready to receive like and to see those opportunities for them to manifest. Anyway, I realized I was speaking very passionately. Does that resonate?
Yeah, it does. No, you spoke well.
Yeah.
And I can even expand on that. There's the same thing happened to me the other day in a different circumstance though. I was feeling particularly overwhelmed for a few days, and I had a conversation. I met up with someone, with a friend of mine, and this never happens to me because when I talk to people nowadays, because of how my own mindset has changed and what I value has changed and how I speak to people has changed. Usually the conversations I have, if they ever go into problems, it's always in a pleasant or constructive way, sorry. You know, like whenever we talk about something, like people can tell me what's going on, but they don't vent at me all that much. So I don't really have a lot of people that come to me and just vent without thinking about wanting to fix it anymore, you know? And that's partly because I recognize that that's not something that I want to do to people and that I feel is valuable, because I recognize that when I vent, it's without wanting to find a solution, it's just projecting negativity and reinforcing that belief in myself that this is my reality. And of course we can feel bad about something, and recognizing, hey, this feels really bad. This is going on. I'm not quite sure what to do about it. I need a moment, or I need you to talk to me and like, can we brainstorm, or can you just be here with me? That's a very different place of speaking than, oh, I hate this and this is happening and I feel worthless and da 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 da. You know, there's a constructive way to tell someone what's been going on and for them to be there with you in that, even without them having to problem solve it, right? Mm. Did I explain that in a way
that makes sense? Yep.
Okay. But then the other day, and this hasn't happened to me for years because I've established this in myself for a long while now. And recently, when I was in a low energy state, I met up with someone, a friend, who's very much in this community and someone I thought would, you know, this wouldn't be something that they do. And they vented to me for a couple of hours, and it affects your energy, right? If someone's venting at you all this negativity, they're projecting, and you're going to feel that. And they vented for like 2 hours about really heavy stuff, and holding that space, especially when I wasn't prepared as well, was really draining and exhausting. But immediately afterwards, I realized the only reason that happened today, and that came into my space today, in my life today, and that I didn't have the capacity, the only reason that came in was because I hadn't been in the best energy state or aligned with my values at that particular moment in time, right? And because I was in a bad headspace, and because of that, I attracted that into my life, right? And it's just so interesting. But yeah, same problem, but a different way of showing up.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's so fascinating. And it's interesting because it's like before you are consciously experiencing this yourself and able to see why it's happening, from the outside in, when someone explains this, what we're experiencing to people, you kind of like feel like they're talking crazy. Like it just like seems like a ridiculous. No, it does though. From the outside in, it just sounds like a ridiculous concept. Like, oh, how does that work? Like we can't control the world around us, but people, I think it's just so underrated. Like the way we experience life is a reflection. Is our brain. Like it really is. It's like our brain is our life. Like, yes, there's external things happening, but our brain is the filter, right? And, you know, if people get the concept. I'm very passionate.
No, I agree. I am too. But the thing is, like, I could have just decided after seeing her messages to me that morning, which seemed fine, but I probably would have picked up that they weren't as good and decided to reschedule to another day or give her a phone call or something like that if I was in a better headspace. Like, I would have been given that information, right? But instead, I missed that and I stuck to whatever my default conditioning was, and that's the reality that I had. And it was just like immediately though, afterwards, I was like, I need to have a look at my mindset and get into a better state, because this isn't the life that I want to continue living, right? It was just, it was a real wake-up call that I had been in a bad state for a while, and had started impacting my relationship. Opportunities to substantiate what it already believes. Because your reticular activating is set up like that. It's not a bad system. It's set up for you to get and achieve your goals. But if your goals are unconsciously, focused on what you don't want, and focused on, getting approval or being attached to someone, or repeating cycles of trauma that you had as a kid, if that's what your brain is conditioned to look for, then that's what will come. So that's why we also repeat 7-year cycles, right? Or I think it's 7 years.
Yeah.
It's why we repeat those cycles, because we haven't reconditioned our brain. So your brain's picking up the same damn things, right? And so if you can retrain that, then you can change what you pick up. So if you train that to be like, okay, no, this is why we do vision boards, and you need to look into your childhood trauma and unlock all of that and let go of it and redefine what it means for you. And when we do all this kind of work, what we're enabling ourselves to do is to see, where do we want to go, and how do I, mindset wise, which influences energetically wise, right? What is it that I want? Who do I need to be to get there? If I can be the person that has these things, that wants these things, that believes that's possible for myself, then our brain will filter out exactly what will allow us to get there and what will enable us to get there as fast as it possibly can. So you'll start seeing the people on the street that are going to help you. You're going to actually focus in on them instead of just ignoring them. You're going to have these interactions, and you'll be able to think of different questions than you otherwise would have to ask, and suddenly connections are going to start happening. You will see an opportunity for me, overseas, of potentially someone that might want my work. And it becomes really natural and easy for me to be like, oh, hey, well, I see this. Maybe you see this too. It sounds like a relationship. Maybe you see this too.
Do you see me?
Do you want this? And they might be like, yeah, I really like your work. I've been looking for that. I've heard that so many times. It's like, oh, I've been looking for this. I've been needing someone to do this. And it's like, oh, really? I thought that might be the case. Here's my work. If you want it, let me know. And then suddenly things start happening. The right people start coming into your life, because that's what you're actually focused on. You're not focused on everyone else like you were before. And so things start happening. So in the more sciencey way, which is what my brain half operates on as well, that's how this all works as well. So it's not just based in woo-woo. It is also based in how our brains operate in order for us to survive. And if you can train that and utilize that, then all these things do start falling into place really, really damn quickly.
Yep.
And it just happens. At one point I was, broke, and I was like, what's going on? And
there's a cut there, because I think the thing stopped. But I also just wanted to acknowledge you for something that I like that you do. I think there's so many valuable principles that come out of the conscious world, as we'll call it, that isn't necessarily super absorbable for people, because the way it's often communicated is quite from a very up there way, if that makes sense. It's very like you said, woohoo. I think it's so beautiful that you are able to articulate some of these principles from a very scientific point of view, because what it allows and opens up people who have that framework already embedded in them. And I think that's really beautiful that you can be a bridge for those people.
thank you. You say the nicest things all the way through this podcast.
Just you wait. Just you wait. Yeah.
That was something I really struggled with.
Really?
So when I was younger, at least like we're only talking like what, 4 years ago, but like, you know, when I was learning all of this, what was really hard for me was my framework was in logic, as we were saying before, right? And my framework was in science.
Yeah.
And so coming into these and being like, I want to understand them, they kind of make sense to me, but not being able to integrate them because I was lacking in my conceptualization of it, in my logic of it. And that was such a barrier for me, and it really prevented a lot of my growth because that's where my framework was. And of course, yes, there's an element of being able to train my brain to have more faith in things and to be able to accept things I don't completely understand. Like that is a muscle to train. What I realized as well, everything is a muscle you can train, everything, which is actually really powerful that I learned recently. But anyway, in this, that was something that I really struggled with. So for me, when I was getting lessons from someone or when someone would share something really insightful that helped them grow, and I couldn't integrate it completely because it didn't hit home for me. Sometimes it was the science and of like understanding what it meant through my own research and how it operates in the biological level as well, not just the spiritual level. I was able to form patterns in things and form connections in things that made so much sense to me, and suddenly it hit home for me. So that was a tool that I used in order to conceptualize a lot of concepts I was learning that I wanted to integrate, was using the science. So it's really nice that you say that, and that it's like helping some other people to understand these things which might have a higher barrier to entry if you are like me and weren't born with an understanding of faith, or like a muscle built of faith, of believing in something you don't completely understand. Like I did not have that muscle at all. So, you know, I'm just glad to hear that it's helpful in some way, because that for me was really hard. And I got told a lot from people being like, why don't you understand it? Like you're saying you get it, but you're not able to integrate it. Like what's wrong with you? Like I'd get that a lot, but we do have different frameworks, right, in our brain, and you can't change, well, I shouldn't say can't. It's unlikely that you can change it overnight, right? It's a muscle to build so that it's something you're able to rely on more and more and more. So yeah, that was something that I had to go through. And right now, my journey the past year, a big part of it has been developing how to believe in something greater than myself without an expectation of needing to understand exactly what that means. Just because I know how valuable it is to take my certainty off of my logic and onto the belief that everything will work out and that life is happening for me. And if I can make that change, it frees up so much of my capacity to go after what I want without the fear of it not working and without needing to understand everything. So
That's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It was, broke, and I was like, what's going on? And then the next point, because of that shift in my mindset, everything started falling into place, and it became so easy for me to see the opportunity of where I could go. Now, the main point that I wanted to make, and I noticed when you were talking as well, is that being so attached to a certain future and where we wanted to go, as we were talking about earlier, and you made this point really clear as well, and I think it's important, is that we sometimes prevent ourselves from getting where we want to be as fast as we can get there, because we think we have to make all these things happen first, which is what you're saying, right? All those things, all these steps we think we need to take in order to get to where we want to go.
Yep.
Of course, it doesn't mean you go blind into everything. There, like I said, prepare for success. But often we limit ourselves and we put all these steps in place not because we think we need to prepare these things in order for it to happen, but because we're scared of taking the leap. And there's a really big difference between those two things. And I think it's really, really important for people to sit down with themselves and be like, okay, what is the minimum that I need to have in place for this to happen? Like, is there like nothing? Do I just like start it? Or do I need to have a part-time job so I feel open and can support my life so I can do that? Or is there like, do I need to write up a a package or like I don't know, I'm thinking about another business I've been thinking about, but like, do we need to write up like a program so that I can talk to these people, share it with them, and then like something can happen from there, right? Like, what is the bare minimum? Or do I just need to contact the people? Like, you know, like what is the bare minimum you need to do in order for that to start manifesting in your life, in order for that to be effectively integrated into your life, is think more accurately. And anything extra from that is just slowing you down so that you don't have to face the situation. It's just slowing you down so you won't get so scared. So you can so you have excuses in yourself. And it's really important for you to sit down and be honest with yourself, because what is the point? What is the point in you spending years getting somewhere you could get to in a few months out of fear? Like, if you want to go there ultimately, that fear you're going to have to pass through, whether it's in 2 years or a month, you're still going to have to pass through it, right? It doesn't go away. I'm sorry, it doesn't go away. I know. Yeah. And so, like, I spent 2 years really pushing against it, more than that, you know, really pushing against it to the point where I had like the hardest possible year of my life, where I was wrecked. Like, I didn't meet anyone. You were like, I'm not sure about this person. Like, this is when you met me. When it was a really dark place. I was spending like all-nighters doing work. I was exhausted all the time. I was emotionally drained. My relationship was a mess. Like, I was alone. Like, it was horrible. It was really dark. And that's all because I was just so resistant to where I wanted to go. And I just said, no, I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to do this to get to where I wanted to go. Necessary for me to get to where I am now, because it really forced me to face those fears. But that's the thing, it was facing those fears. If I had more confidence to face them earlier, then I would have got to where I wanted earlier. And so I think that's really important for people to understand as well, is that your goals aren't a million miles away. Nothing is a million miles away. It's really just a shift in mindset, but that takes a lot of courage and a lot of gusto, and it takes facing things that can be really scary. But the truth is, what you want is always available in the world. It might not seem that way. The world is a very big place, and if someone is able, if even one person is able to do something that you can look at and be like, oh yeah, that's something I want to do, then it is 100% attainable for you as well. It doesn't matter who you are. You might have to become a different person to get there, although when I say that, I'm not sure how much it is becoming a different person as much as it is like unveiling who you are, stripping the fear, stripping the, like, well, I was about to say anxiety, but that's just from fear, but like, you know, stripping all that trauma and fear from what you perceive like you are not, right? What you perceive you are, which is actually what you're not. And it's just conditioning and it's just a cover. And if you can strip that, and if you focus on just unveiling yourself and realizing that's already who you are, like, who we are in our core as a baby is not someone that's traumatized and is fearful, although we might have generational trauma, but that's something you can let go of. It's not who you are. I promise. but like, you know, if you can unveil that and realize that, like, oh, it's just in you. It's just like all these layers. Everyone's got the layers. You're not alone. If you strip that, then you are growing into the person, you're unveiling that person that can achieve all these things with confidence and with ease. Doesn't mean things won't happen, but the way you face these things is significantly different because your mindset's different. So I think that's just really important for people to understand that, like, all these goals that you want to do, these things that you want to try, where you feel like, oh, maybe if I have more confidence and stuff like that, like, maybe if it's just a preventative measure from having to face fear and anxiety. You know what's really interesting? It's like a different person.
Oh, really? I was going to ask you, like, well, how do you feel about this version of yourself? Because, like, from my perspective, like, you're very well-spoken. I remember you saying you were feeling a lot of, like, not anxiety, but, like, a lot of resistance. But the way you're talking seems pretty, like, you know.
Interesting. But I think my energy's really low. Like, watching this back, even, like, say right now, I'm, like, probably mid-range energy. This is, like... Watching this back is like, whoa, because it's actually, I'm really glad we're doing this because it's showing how much my priorities have changed, which is part of the point of this, was seeing where we've changed. And yeah, because like from then, I was like, I'm not sure if we spoke about it in the first part or the second half, but like I wasn't in a good, first part, I wasn't in a good place. I was moving, my degree was finishing, I was going through relationship stress, everything was coming to a head. I found out some health issues. So this was like a really rough patch in terms of just everything was happening all at once and I didn't know what was going on. And dealing with that was really intense. And so I came into this and I was really heavy emotionally. And you can just see it, like on my face and in my body language. It's just, and look at the Superman curl of my hair. It always does that. But you see a little weak. But it's so interesting because it looks like a different me, because what I value now is different. But it's cool because right now how I'm showing up is very different to how I was showing up there, you know, because I'm much more relaxed at the moment. And when I smile, it's more genuine. And like, that was the thing. Like, when I was looking at that, I was like, I need a pause and I'm not taking it. And I'm showing up instead, trying to push through that and be as authentic as I can be and try and offer value. But because it's coming from a place of stress, you can see in my whole body language and in my face and even the words I'm saying and my tone, like I did not think I sounded like that. And I really hope I don't sound like that all the time, but you can see like in my tone, it's definitely lower energy. And it's almost like I'm a teacher instead of a student.
You know what I find really fascinating about that though? Is that like, now I might be naive as hell, which is likely.
As hell.
But I genuinely, when I watch that, like I don't notice half the things you just spoke about. I don't notice the inauthenticity. I don't notice the low energy. Like, I don't know, the way you're speaking like seemed convincing, or like, you know, it seemed genuine.
It's authentic to me. Like
Sure,
what I'm
sure.
saying is genuine. It's just the place it's coming from. And it's not even, okay, so here's what I think is what's going on, right? I'm speaking genuinely and authentically on what I believe, but because I also am feeling stressed and to the point where that's impacting my ability to speak, I'm trying to, the words and the things I want to say are trying to push through the barrier of, or like the layer and the wall of my stress. And in trying to do that, it loses some of its momentum. And so what comes out, although the words are authentic, what comes out though is a lower energy and a different tone, and it's more forced. So that's where you're seeing in my body language it's so different. Like, yes, what I'm saying is what I believed, right? And it was authentic to me at the time, and a lot of it still is, but it's pushing through the stress, and so it's coming out as a much more of an energy drain and less authentic. And yeah, not less authentic, sorry, lower vibrational energy and just like more of a teacher and less articulated. And it's so interesting to see, because I was like, I wouldn't really want to grab coffee with that person because she seems kind of like right now, like of course we're our harshest critics, but at least from my standards right now for myself and how we're talking here, which I hope is, you know, a lot lighter, that is very heavy to me. And it's just interesting to see.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm interested to see where it goes. I think I remember vaguely a question I asked that opens up a can of worms, but let's
there's a point in here that I've been so hyped to talk about, and I'm so excited, but it's intense.
Okay, well, let's get there.
Really encourage you to look into what it actually is. I need to do it a lot more.
Touche.
And to achieve those things.
Yeah, for sure. And it's something that doesn't stop. Like it does happen, and even for me, like I still catch myself doing it all the time, where I'm like, oh no, like I need to do this first, I need to do this first. And it's just this
Yeah.
constant. And I just think you touched on so much, and I feel like there's so many different pathways to explore conversationally. Because even something you said, just like the fear of following the path that you know you probably should take, that sort of lukewarmness, that passiveness is the most deteriorating feeling. And I can even link that to like things in my past. Like for example, like I grew up in a Christian sort of setting, and there was a point in time where I felt like it didn't align with me anymore. But then there was this resistance to leaving out of fear of like what that belief system and being the fear of being lost, the fear of not having control and not knowing. And I think a lot of people just have this desire for control and this knowing of life. But I do actually want to touch on a subject which I was sort of tossing up whether I want. Oh, I'm just preparing myself. This is the beginning.
The beginning of the end.
Oh, shit. Oh, I'm nervous. All right, sorry. Strap in.
No, I love it.
All right, ready. But I do actually want to touch on a subject which I was sort of tossing up whether I wanted to bring up, but I think it's important because I think while it's all well and good for us to be talking about this as well, I think there are some situations, and I really want to be able to talk in a way that's very receptible for people with mental health and chemical imbalances, as you could sometimes call it. And I think when it comes to things like depression or trauma or OCD and all these other things, it is like, and like back in 2019, I had this really arrogant, like I will openly say, I had this very arrogant mindset where like, because I was mentally able to sort of navigate my mind, things were so much easier for me to reach because it was like, I didn't have that impact. But then having experienced pretty severe anxiety in like 2020 and whatnot, like I sort of understood how hard and if not impossible it was to have those mindset shifts. And so I'd be curious to explore with you, like how can we navigate these situations? How can we navigate these limiting beliefs when there is literally such a strain on what our brain's able to like do in terms of like actually getting better with these situations? So I guess I want to invite a conversation about what can we do when we're in those situations? Like what small steps can we take? What gentle steps can we take? Because I think, I feel like the way I wanted to word that is like, how can we be more attentive to people who might struggle reaching these realizations quicker? I just wanted to throw that in. I think we should keep playing though to get the full context. Diving into self-development and being around, like it all sounds great, but it's not that simple.
No, that like, I relate to, I mean, okay, I don't have a lot of authority to talk about that. I think it's, that is such like a intricate conversation.
Yep.
I think I can talk on a few points like surrounding that I understand, or at least like I've had experience with. But like for me, oh my goodness, when I started, okay, when this journey started for me, it was almost like I didn't choose it. Like this was, I was with someone that really was wanting to go into development and a coach at a time when and like to be a coach at a time where like I wasn't prepared to, and I was so resistant, and there was so much fear and anxiety, and I was trying to do everything because I had so many like, so much attachment to people pleasing. There was so much that I was told to do and to try and to just be better in, and like in terms of like in development, and I was so scared because I couldn't do it. Like I tried and I just couldn't. It just didn't happen for me. And I was like, I'm trying to understand that, like, you know, like I'm doing all these things that like you're saying for me to do, and it's just not happening. And like you're having all these realizations and it's just not happening for me. And I felt so hopeless and I felt so lost. And recently, the other thing that I wanted to touch on for that is recently, as someone very close in my life that's in like a lot of pain, to the point where it's really overriding their system. It's causing them to go to work and then come home from work and the whole time being in like chronic pain. And so mentally, it feels like impossible to be able to do anything else and focus on anything else. Recently, we had a discussion and realized, okay, well, where does that pain come from? It comes from inflammation most of the time. Where is that inflammation coming from? Well, most of the time it's coming from your stress, which is coming from your beliefs, your mindset, your perspective. So if we fix the root cause, it should ripple out and help with everything, because it will help with reduce your inflammation. It will help reduce with and therefore like your injury and enable you to heal and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, if we are willing to be aware of this, it's coming from that root cause. So with this person, they came to me and they're like, but I don't even know what to do. And like, I don't feel I have any capacity to do anything, but you're right. And I was like, okay, well, first step, admitting it. But like, it was like, okay, well, I don't have a lot of coaching experience. I don't know, right? I don't have any. I don't know exactly what's going to work for you, but I can at least say, like, for me, what really started the ball rolling wasn't doing everything at once. That prevented me from getting anywhere. That was so overwhelming and scary, and I just expected it to, something to click and it to work, or like I was wrong, something wrong in me, and it just in the sense of like maybe I just couldn't do it. That was the fear that came. I was like, what if I just can't and I just don't ever become the person I want to be? That was the biggest fear for me. And the truth is that's not the reality. It can feel like that, it can seem like that, especially when you're trying to do all these things and it's just not happening, or it's making it worse and stuff like that. Take a breath. My recommendation is to take a breath and take some distance from that. Whatever way allows you to do that, see it from a broader perspective. We look at so much, especially in those moments with a really narrow vision of what this is, so attached to yourself. It's like, this is me. If you look out and be like, okay, what is my situation? Okay, what can I do? What do I have the space to do? How can I create some more space? And it can, at least for me, what started working for me, it was as simple, and if you look at my journals, you'll see the progression. It was as simple as just like every now and then when I had the space, I wrote something in my journal, and I didn't just like offload, I asked myself questions. Okay, well, why is that coming from that place? Like, what does that really mean? Is that how I want to be? Does that allow me, is that the truth? Does that allow me to, move forwards? Like what, being really honest with yourself. But for me, that's what started. It was just giving myself the space where every now and then when I had the capacity, I'd journal. It took me like a year of or 2 years of like super struggle of like trying to do everything to just being like, this is not working. And just like every now and then picking up a pen and doing that when I could and not putting so much pressure on it. Over time, I saw the benefit of doing that. It enabled me to have a little more clarity around my life, and therefore a little more space to then do it a bit more. And then a bit more, and then a bit more. And you'll see the first year, there's like 10 to 20 entries, like that's it, in a whole year. And then the next year there was like 60. And the next year was like every day, right? But it was just enabling myself to have the space because I gave myself more clarity. That over time it built up to something that actually opened up a lot more space, and all of a sudden these other practices started working, right? Well, started like working a lot better. All of these times I could sit through like a breath work and like really feel it. A lot of the times I could be more present. I could challenge myself more and not be so scared. And then now it's like, oh, I can follow a different path in my future and allow that to happen and not be so scared of what's going to happen in the future, because I know this is going to lead me to where I want to go, because I'm more receptive and more open, and my passion and my why is so much clearer. So I know that everything I'm doing, as long as I'm doing it with the right intention, is going to lead me to that pathway, right? I don't make a decision that's completely different from like where I want to go. It all has an intention to grow me, to get me closer to that, right? But that was enabled through this space, step by step. So for me, how it happened for me, and I was really blocked off to all of this at the start. Okay, something that I noticed in this, which came up for me, like not about the context so much, like what we're talking about, but just I want us to have more fun in these kinds of conversations. Like I hear this a lot, but the idea of taking ourselves like less seriously. But I think, especially because I've been thinking about starting a podcast as well, the intention that I've wanted to have is just authentic conversations without so much pressure.
Oh, 100%.
Around what is said, how it is said, and what it means. But just to like talk
Yep.
and have more fun.
Yeah.
You know?
100%.
That's just coming up a lot right now. Where I was like, gosh, it would have been way better if we were just laughing more.
Oh, so true. I was
Right?
watching that going like, oh, man, come on.
It's heavy.
Yeah.
It would be, go.
No, I was just noticing a few things. I was noticing actually a people-pleasing tendency that I have, where like and I do it out of courtesy. I'll go like I'm trying to receive. But I noticed I was doing it more at the beginning of my question because I was scared about how you would receive the question, and so I was almost compensating as a defense mechanism by people pleasing. Like, yeah, it's just interesting what I'm observing now with like the knowledge of the defense mechanisms. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what else I'm noticing?
Yes.
You look, no, just like right now, because I've got the comparison on my screen.
Yeah.
You look way healthier now.
Oh,
Than
healthier.
you did then.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Like just, it might be the golden sun, but just like, you look, but you just look like you've got, like you didn't look bad then. It's just.
I was in a different place for sure though. Yeah.
You look like, you've got more life to your skin and like more, you know, you just look better. You look healthier.
Thank you.
I was just looking at this and I was like, you definitely look a lot healthier now, because I think you were looking pretty pasty then too.
I wouldn't know.
Which, like, next to me, I mean, isn't saying much, but I just feel like you've gained more vibrancy in you now.
Oh,
than
100%.
you had at that point in time, especially looking at this back. That's what I meant by that.
No, big time. Yeah, for sure.
Which is good to see, because I'm watching this and I'm like, hey, Luke's getting a health upgrade.
Health upgrade, baby.
Love.
Should we continue?
When it comes to like chemical imbalances, when it comes to people that are in like such a bad state that their body is just like not receptive of responding to like external stimuli the way that might allow them to be more calm and to be more open and receptive. I can't speak on it to a really big degree, but I would say I would recommend at least something to try might be to just let go of trying so hard. Is to enable yourself to do something that you feel you can, whatever that is, whether it's a meditation, whether it's a breath work.
Sorry, I'm trying to. I remember there being a point where there was like an internal disagreement, and I'm just trying to. And you'd be able to see the energy shift within me. I'm just like looking out for that.
Let's find it. There are classes now starting to come up, or an online breath work even, whether it's like journaling, which was for me, whatever it is, whatever you feel that you can open, just like if you feel it's right to try, start from there and celebrate your wins.
Yep.
Celebrate your wins.
Yeah.
So like every single time you do that, you know, it doesn't matter if someone else was like, oh, but you just did it once. It doesn't matter. For you, it's like if you do that once, you open up that space. It's like, yes, I took the time to be open with myself, and I took the time to do something that grew myself, even though I couldn't do that before. Right? I made a different
For those of you, just to recontextualize, we had these cushions on a table, and it was just, they were not meant to be there. I just couldn't imagine what that guy was thinking.
I'm really curious though for that moment that you see when your energy changes. There's a couple moments where we're really going to observe changes in perspective here, which is really cool.
I hope it's actually here, because obviously I didn't like listen to it when I put these together. But I wonder, there's a part of me that wonders if I deleted it. I don't think I would have, but I'm curious. No, it has to be here.
And there's a decision. In that moment, I made a different decision to what I've made every moment before. Celebrate it. Be like, yes, amazing. Okay, if you celebrate it, you're going to get closer to where you want to go. If you say, because you're going to train your reticular activating system to look for it more. If you say, oh, but all these moments sucked and I'm doing so bad, which is what I did, you're going to get deeper and deeper into the spiral. And I don't say this to scare you, please don't let it. You're going to get deeper and deeper into the spiral of looking at the things that you're not doing well. And therefore, you're going to keep staying stuck in that paradigm. So I recommend for you to let go of how long it's going to take. It will take faster than you realize when you start this. I can promise you that. If you let go, it will be faster. You don't need to control it. It's okay. Then yeah, over time, just allowing yourself that space of just, okay, one, celebrate it. Maybe it took, for me, it was like months between these, right? Months later, oh, I feel I could, maybe that's something I want to do. Let me make a different decision. I'll do it. You do it. Yes, I did it. Then like all of a sudden you'll see it starts increasing. At least it did for me.
Yep.
That's what I'd recommend if you're like really stuck, is just focusing on something that's so simple. It's just picking the thing that you feel most aligned to, that you see, ask yourself these questions and gives yourself a different perspective. Because remember, we're trying to train our brain to see things differently. That's what's going to start propelling you towards a different future. So, and making you aware and to look for a different future. If you just offload and you're like, oh, I feel better in that moment, but you're still running on the same conditioning. So pick something, whether it's a meditation that enables you more clarity around how you're feeling, and therefore like they're like, oh, but you can see things in this way, and you're like, oh, that's relieving. Like, or if it's like with journaling, you ask yourself those questions, right? Like, why is this happening? Is it helpful for me? Is there another way I can see this? Like, where is that coming from? What fear is that coming from? Whatever way it is, pick that and then be like, okay, I'm going to let go of how fast this has to be. I'm going to let go of trying to do it when it's like so ridiculously hard and I don't want to. But whenever I feel there's a decision that pops up in my brain, like a moment where it's like, oh, maybe I could choose that. Choose it if you can. Over time, you'll see that increases and that will help. That's my advice. But again, I'm not you. I'm not these people. I don't know how your brain is working with those if you're saying like chemical imbalances, but that's what I would recommend to train. And over time, I imagine that would start regulating what's happening. It'd start regulating those chemical imbalances. Because obviously like being in stress, being in that state, it messes everything up. It messes your hormones. It messes everything. And so I would say, yeah, just focus on doing that and allowing that space and enabling, inviting that clarity to come. And it took me years. I'm still doing it. It took me years. I literally had a conversation the other day with someone where I was like, I was getting so angry so quickly with like this one problem. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I don't even know what's going on. Like I cannot see this. I was fortunate enough where I could be receptive to when they told me what was going on because of the other things I've built in my life. But they were like, you're just really defensive about it because you've been avoiding it because it's scary for you. And that's why you're getting angry so quickly, because you're pushing against it so hard because it's so scary for you. And I was like, luckily, because I had that space, I was like, oh my God, you're right. And I was like, okay, all right. No, you're right. That's not how I want my future to be. Now that I can see it, I can shift how I visualize this, how I perceive it, and therefore I can make a different decision in that moment. Right? So it still happens, but it's just over time inviting more of that space in.
For sure. It's just to simplify it further and to summarize.
Yeah, go for it. Does that resonate with you, by the way? Or not?
I think for me, like, I'm very, I try very hard to be very, because I think when it comes to this conversation, I don't like speaking super authoritatively about this because I don't know what these people go through. But I think
pause it.
I've already got things to say, yeah.
This is interesting because this also confused me because I was really confused.
You weren't speaking authoritatively.
No, but I mean, I was, but I had also clarified that I can't speak on what they feel. And I'd done that multiple times. So when you said this, I got so, I was like, I didn't say that I knew what they were going through. I made it clear that I didn't.
It was a massive projection, dude. Do you want to hear? Okay, so you know what it was?
Yeah.
Oh, that was so painful to sit through, by the way, because I could see what my brain was doing. So I was compensating. So there's lots of defense mechanisms at play here. So number one, right,
I obviously knew how important it was for me to be attentive towards the audience of people who go through severe mental health, who go through all that stuff. But I wasn't fully actually listening to what you were saying. But what my brain was filtering because of my beliefs, like exactly what we were talking about before, but what it was doing, it was hearing all of these big words and hyper explanations about things, which actually, listening to it now, makes total sense. Like everything you said, I feel was very sound advice to give, even to people who, you know, go through that stuff. But what my brain heard at the time was, she's making this really complicated. People who go through mental health are gonna be like, what the fuck? Therefore, it's authoritative. But that's not actually what's happening. And so I projected my own filter onto you going, yeah, I don't like speaking. It's just so interesting, man.
Interesting. That's really cool to hear. Because like I did go on too long, but it was because I was also trying to gather my thoughts because I was working through stress. And so it was taking me longer to get my point across.
Yep.
And so like I was waffling. Like I could have summarized that in a really easy way. Oh, this camera looks so much better now. Anyway, in an easy way, space.
Yeah.
Whatever allows you to get space from a situation, that is going to allow you the capacity to see things differently, and perspective is power. If you have a different perspective, you can make a different decision, you can do things that are going to heal you. That is like literally it. Like, yes, I can explain more and what that means and make it more digestible, but that's all I needed to say.
Yep.
But in here, it's so interesting. It's so cool that we can see that. This is awesome.
It's nice. It's a nice feeling because like to be able to recognize what's happening and just with the new knowledge that I have, because like, yeah, like I said, everything you're like, that's sound advice to give someone. Like all you're saying, it's actually quite gentle. It's like, just give yourself space. Like, don't put so much pressure on yourself. Like, it's actually really sound advice. And I'm here filtering it in my own way, being like, nah, it's too much. Like, it's kind of cringe, man. Like,
it's really interesting though, because if we want to talk about this and get like really vulnerable and personal and make this something that, you know, is useful for you, this comment that you made, there's two comments. It was this one and one later, but this is one of the things that really rubbed me the wrong way after this. Like, it left a bad taste in my mouth, was because, like, yes, looking back at this, I'm like, yeah, my energy is low and I'm talking with more of a tone of like, I know exactly what I'm talking about, which like I do, but at the same time, they should be taking it a lot easier than I am and should be a lot more open than I am and less definitive like I am. But like, it's still, in saying that, because you responded with that defense mechanism, I recognize that, and it felt wrong. Because we feel these things, right? Like, if someone responds to us through defense, not through authenticity, like not through actual curiosity or genuine inspiration, like, it hits us. Like, we feel like it was wrong, or it was dirty, or it was unsavory, and then that stays with us. So it's really important to be able to like see this and be able to talk about it and be vulnerable and express it, because this was one of the comments where, as you're saying, and it makes so much more sense now, which is so interesting, that it wasn't coming from a place of genuine curiosity and listening and inspiration. It was coming from a place of being triggered and of defending that your own personal beliefs and values that you were scared to have a contrarian opinion of.
Yes.
And in projecting that, it hit me, and even though I was also not in the best energy place and etc., it still left a sour taste in my mouth that made me feel really uneasy about the podcast. So yeah, that's cool.
And that's why we're here now to be like, look, this is what happened. Yeah, this is insane. I just feel like, oh man, I wish I did that course so much sooner. And I'm still like early days in it too, so it's like crazy. Do you want to keep?
Oh yeah, we talked about that in the first part of this podcast, but Monique has a course which Luke is currently going through, and it's giving him a lot of insights and in detail, understandings of his projection mechanisms and his defense mechanisms. So And so praise Mon.
Praise Mon. Shall we listen to this, the rest?
We're almost there.
We're almost there. Let's do it. Oh, I'm scared. All right, with what we're trying to do with the you effect, right? It's all about encouraging authenticity and just like really simplifying things for people. Because I think with everything we just sort of spoke about now, what it comes down to is just the thing that we don't have to worry about how to get out of this, because it's always like, how do we get out of this hole that we're in so that we can live the life that we want to live. But really what it comes down to is just like, let's just try and be us for a second. Like, let's just try. I'm sorry, this is so hard to watch.
I'm watching you just like cringe away.
Oh, this is so hard to watch. I'm going to keep playing, but this is so difficult right now. Try and be, and obviously there's different ways to do that. Like you mentioned, like meditation and whatever, but it can actually be even simpler. Like, you know, and there's different tools. Like one thing that I've discovered is like cacao. And for those of you who don't know what cacao is, it's literally a beverage. It's a fucking, I swore, it doesn't matter. Sorry, I'm just, so much. I can see the discomfort within you as well now. That's making me cringe more because I'm like, I've caused this.
It's interesting though, isn't it? If we pay attention, if we're not in our heads and we're able to like, actually, that's also a really interesting point that I'd love to talk about.
Yeah.
But if we're not in our heads and we're actually observing the person that we're talking to or listening to, you pick up so much more. Like you can tell if someone doesn't like what you said. You can tell if their energy changes. You can tell if they want to leave. You can tell if they're engaged. You know, you can tell all these things if you're actually listening and actually paying attention. And that's something I've been practicing a lot more lately as well, is listening and talking to someone by like making sure my eyes are on them. You know?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
100%,
like
yes.
When we think, like I am right now, my eyes will go off to the side, right? Like when we're thinking, we'll go like this. And if someone's talking to us and we do that, we're not actually paying attention to what they're saying.
Exactly, we're thinking, yes.
Yeah, and the same thing as well, that when I'm talking, I'm wanting to talk more from inspiration. So of course, like I'll still be thinking at times and my eyes will go off to the side, but to talk more, even if, especially when it's challenging, because when something is a challenge and you don't want to face it or you're having an argument, I won't always look at the person that I'm
it's
talking
so hard.
to. It's really interesting. And I noticed that the other day. I'd look to the side or something and express how I was feeling, and even just explaining how I was feeling and trying to like, you know, put my things into words and like make it come across the right way so they'd respond the way I wanted them to respond. And by like doing that, looking to the side and doing that, I wasn't actually connecting with their feelings, with what was happening, with being able to understand how they were feeling as I was speaking, to speak from inspiration and not get stuck in my head, but speak from my heart without a filter. Like those are things that I was trying to encourage more, like of the opposite, sorry, you know, of connecting more by actively looking at someone and when they're talking or when I'm talking. Yeah, but we can notice so much when we actually pay attention and listen. Like right now, looking at this back, right? Because there's no pressure for us to say anything or to have thoughts ready. We can observe so much of our body language and be like, oh my God, we can see exactly what's going on here.
Even like you're let back now. You're like, get me away from this. Like, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm getting ready for battle. Like if someone in this, like if someone tackles me, like verbally or emotionally, like if someone sets me a challenge where they're like, this thing is like, it triggers me, I'm like settling in. I'm like, okay, like you want to go into this? You want to talk about it? I've dealt with harsher conversations than this. Let's go.
Oh,
which
damn.
is not good.
I was gonna say, damn.
Yeah, which is not good. And that's not all of what I'm doing. I'm exaggerating.
Of course.
I feel like a little bit that's something that I can do as well, where it's like, I will face this head on. I won't, you know, shy away from this. So if you want to go, not like go as in argue, but
Yeah.
in like,
Let's go. Let's dive into the conversation.
Like, yeah, I'll do that. But I think I can see that a little bit here.
Yeah, no, for
Okay.
sure, for sure.
The bucket. I swore. It doesn't matter. It's chocolate in its rawest form, and
Yeah.
and I think people don't actually understand, like not even in a spiritual way, but like cacao literally has all the. It's got theobromine, and I don't want to overcomplicate it, but pretty much cacao literally makes you feel more relaxed. It's got magnesium in it. It's got all these chemicals that literally have the ability to calm yourself. And so that could be the literal first step, is like supplementing like hot chocolates with cacao, and then just finding yourself environments where you can have the beverage and just getting yourself to a state of calm, because there is no point in trying to figure out like how to approach life when you're in a state of like heightened nervous system. Like that's step one.
Yeah.
What's really interesting, by the way, if we were more open in this, we would see that our points were essentially the same.
Yeah, no, literally.
Our points were about regulating your system, and which allows you to have the capacity to have space from, like, you can regulate your system by having space or by doing these things you're talking about. Essentially, we are wanting to accomplish the same thing in our conversation.
Yeah.
If we were more open, we would be able to see that in this, which means if our energy was higher, we'd be able to see more in this.
And again, I think I'm compensating. Like I felt like you were overcomplicating like the regulation process for people, and so I'm trying to sit here and be like, no, well, sometimes all you have to do is drink a beverage, right? But you were literally saying take space. Like it's not like, you know. So it's just yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's really interesting though, because in here as well, this was a bit that after the comment you said, I observed, and I was like, this is strange. You asked me a question, but in this, because as you're saying, you were somewhat projecting, you had steps in place of what you thought the answer was. So I thought it was really strange where I came off that, and I remember thinking, I was like, he asked me a question, but he already knew the answer he wanted, because he then said the answer. And that was really strange to me as well, because you obviously disliked what I said and then said, okay, well, I think like step 1 is this, step 2 is this. And I was like,
yeah, I don't like that either. That's the last thing I want to do on these podcasts. Oh, God.
And that was a thing where I was like, I wasn't sure about how this was going in terms of your capacity to run the podcast at this stage, when like you'd ask a question but have an answer and then not be happy with the person you're interviewing answer, like, because I wasn't sure as a platform, what I thought as a platform, which I think you do want, this was just you being triggered.
Yeah.
What you wanted was a platform where people can speak on their perspectives,
100%.
but in an open way.
Yeah.
Right?
You know
and
what
in a
it
way
was,
that's
though?
not definitive.
Sorry, yeah. So I got an idea. I didn't want to take away from your point just now, though.
No, it's okay, go for it.
I think I was just in such a fear mindset because I was so hyper aware of wanting to make sure that listeners who suffered from mental health weren't going to feel triggered. But then I projected my own filter and interpretation of like what you said. And it wasn't actually that bad what you said, but like I made it bad in my head. And therefore, I was trying to do crisis management in the conversation where I'm like, because I felt at the time, I was like, if someone hears this, they're going to think it's like ridiculous, you know? So I tried to compensate by being like, oh yeah, you know what? Like, you know, if all you can do is drink cacao, that's fine. But it's just like, it was so belittling, and it was taking away from the authenticity of, the conversation. So.
Interesting.
Yeah. Shall we?
Thank you. Yeah, for sure. Don't feel bad. This is just, I can see it in you right now.
Dude, it's so hard not to, man. It's like, people listening or watching, if you've gotten to this point, it's a 3-hour podcast. This is the juiciest part, though. I can't help but notice the lighting's so bad on my camera right now.
Oh, mine's even worse.
Oh, it's like blue and, screw it, man, whatever. But like, it's so, like, authenticity is the #1 value of this whole thing, man. And so when I'm watching this and knowing that people are going to see this, I'm scared. I don't want people to like now have trust issues with like everything I'm doing after seeing it. So that's why I'm really grateful that we are actually, we've realized it and we've sat down and we're having this conversation, because it also shows, hey, we are freaking
human.
Yeah, we're
Right?
human, and we're also willing to be authentic and vulnerable.
Exactly.
And I think that's really powerful in this,
Yeah.
which I really admire, and I'm very grateful that you want to do this as well, because in this, I think honestly, I think this will build more trust in you, that you're willing to see where you do something from a place that's not healthy or a place of fear, and you're willing to assess that and be vulnerable and to share that in order to help other people, and I think that's really powerful. So
Yeah, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. More torture
Go.
situation, you know. And like for some people it's just going outside, it's just going for a walk. Like, you know.
walk. Oh my God, walks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
challenge it's what you do with that calm that
Yeah.
then matters the most, right?
I just really quick, I'm so curious to see how I deal with this because again, conflict at this point in my life was such a weak point of mine. So I know I'm about to have a defense mechanism. I have no idea what it's going to be. So like, let's dive in, shall we? You've just
Yeah.
challenged me. What does Luke do when he gets challenged in conflict? Let's see. Yeah.
Like that's step one for sure. It was like all these practices is about like giving you
Look at my body language right now. Look at,
Wait.
I'm uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like moving around. I don't know what to do.
space, right? Whether like calming that nervous system, whether it is through the meditation or offloading or this. And then from there, I do challenge that if you want to grow from that, it's what you do with that space. Now that I have that space, how can I see something differently? Because otherwise, when that space is gone, you're going to stay the same,
Yeah.
right?
But
So
then
I do
also,
challenge that.
but just on top of that as well, if people even like who are in those situations where it's like they feel depressed more oftentimes than not, to start off, the idea of needing to do something with that calm can stop them from reaching that calm because it's too much pressure. And I think yeah, ultimately they need to have.
Hold on, you need to pause it because I need to enjoy this. It's like
This is torture for me.
it's just like I'm incorrect as well in my behavior here, but it's just like watching two. It just feels like we're watching two kids that are like trying to. We know what they're thinking and doing, and we know it's so easy for them to like to just shift and do the right thing, but you're just watching it unfold, and it's just really funny, like. No, you know?
Oh, this is
I know, I'm
unreal. Yeah,
enjoying
I
this.
know what you're saying. It's enjoyable, but I'm also just like.
It's like because it doesn't reflect who you are now. And I think that's something that we can often struggle to do. And that's the thing, it's the whole thing about perspective, right? It's like we have different perspectives now. We have space from this. This is not who you are now. It's not reflective of that. And I don't think people will believe it is as well. Because you're literally looking at this and being able to see how you were thinking and where it was coming from the wrong place. So of course, you are not seeing it from the same position as you were then. You have changed, you have grown. And I think, and I'm certain people will see that. And so yeah, in this, but as soon as we have that perspective, we're like, okay, this is not me. Because I look at this Niesha and I'm like, okay, yeah, that is not me right now. Like, it's just not. And so,
Yeah.
you know, and being able to talk about that makes it really funny because it's like you can watch that person and be like, wow.
I just keep noticing, like, you know, when you initially challenged me, I was just like,
Yeah.
moving around a bit, and now you're really like sitting back. Like,
Yeah, it's
alright.
interesting.
It's super interesting. Yeah.
I wonder why in this as well. That actually does make me curious, like why I've opened my body position up so much, even though I was triggered. And I think partly I was actively trying to like calm, I wasn't aggro, so it wasn't like I was trying to calm myself down, but I was trying to settle my nervous system and become open because I wanted to be really open on your podcast. And like, I wanted to be able to hold space for different conversations and opinions. So I wonder if I was doing that as purposefully, because I can't quite remember, to open my perspective and my body position towards you and therefore be more vulnerable. Or because body position changes your physiology. Or if I was doing that as like, if that was a defense mechanism for me. But I don't quite understand yet, because I feel like it could be, but I don't understand yet how it could be to open my body position and for it to be a defense mechanism.
Yeah,
But
I'm not sure either, but it almost looks like your back's straighter, so it looks like you're
Like to me, it looks like you're on guard, like you're ready. But that's just my interpretation. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's how I feel like that's how I think right now I would have felt. So, yeah.
All right, let's get into the rest.
Used to finding ways to find that calm and then getting to a space where they have greater capacity to do something with it. Like, of course, there needs to be some form of like intention of, okay, at some point we have to do something with this space that we're in. But I think we want to try and simplify it to the point where just making it so bloody simple that it's like, it's not.
Like, just you're twitchy. Do you know what I mean? Are you seeing that?
I'm not quite, but let me observe some more.
At least you were just then.
Yeah, let's go back. No, because I want to see. I had to turn my brightness down to cope with this.
Getting them used to finding ways to find that calm and then getting to a space where they have greater capacity to do something with it. Like, of course, there needs to be some form of like intention of, okay, at some point we have to do something.
Look at where your eyes are going. They've gone in like 8 different directions.
That's a defense mechanism.
Just making it so bloody simple that it's like, it's not, doesn't need. Yeah, it's I do agree.
And you can see mine as well. I keep looking to the side. Do you see that?
You are, yeah, like right now. Like right now.
Yeah. I kept looking to the side.
Interesting.
Look at us. We're both like, right now I'm looking at
I know, like we're both.
But like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's keep it going.
We want to try and simplify it to the point where just making it so bloody simple that it's like, it's not, doesn't need. Yeah, it's I do agree with you. Like for me, like, you know, if I'm getting into that state of calm and I'm not doing anything with it, then it's like it's not really gonna help.
I think it's different. I think I have to think on that more.
Yeah.
But
Curious. I like that you said I have to think on that more because that shows a degree of openness. However, was that like a defense mechanism of some kind?
Yeah, curious. The thought passed my mind as well. I was like, wait, is it this or this? I think.
Were you actually open to thinking about that more, even though I was wrong?
Well, I didn't. What did you say?
I actually don't remember.
I couldn't quite hear that bit. Okay. I think. No, true. I think I am open to having that conversation in this because I do remember everything you said, especially in a podcast setting. Like if someone's just at me at the street and having a conversation, I'm more likely, which is something I need to improve on, but I'll be more likely to be like, yeah, okay, and like dismiss it. Because you can step away from the conversation. In a podcast, I'm genuinely interested in having conversations that are different to what I'd expect because that's the point of being on the podcast.
Yeah,
like that's what I'm there to do. In my normal day-to-day life, I can be less shut off to that. In this, I do think I genuinely meant that, but I was also thinking about my own opinion in here. So I wasn't following your trend of thought and went to my own, which wasn't good. Yeah. So I think it's a bit of both.
Okay.
How much it is doing and having to with how much it's like more, it's easy and it's simple to transmute that and to use that if your perspective on what it means is different. Like if you're like, I have to do this to get better, or if it's like, oh, I want to see what this means for me, right? Yep. Instead of like trying to get somewhere, it's just trying to have more understanding of yourself. So I have to think about it a lot more because I have been in states like that where it's like, oh my God, but doing anything is like hard. But that's because of my perspective was like, oh, I'm forcing myself to do that. Forcing is never going to really get you anywhere. And so I do just question on whether there's like a perspective shift that we can provide people. Yes, I am open in this conversation. That might be like, oh, just discover yourself more. And just ask yourself questions more, not to get anywhere, but to just understand yourself.
Yeah.
So I question if there's a way, I have to think about it more, but I question if there's like a way that, you know, it makes it really easy for someone as soon as there is space to just like, be like, oh, hi, me. Who are you today? Like, why, you know, how are you feeling? And if that is really simple to do, if you have the right perspective and you're not trying to get somewhere.
For me, I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see in this I made an effort to be more open in that way. In that particular conversation. But I can see as well, like, look at my expression right there.
Yeah.
I'm not the happiest person.
No.
I was unhappy, not like actually unhappy, like, you know, like when I was like really upset. I definitely was less inspired by a lot of this train of thought because it wasn't touching on things that I felt were like really important to change. It was touching on a lot more of like surface level things. At least it felt like it was coming from that place of like how to band-aid rather than how to fix, which like I understand might be part of the what you're wanting to reach right now. But I definitely think that as well. I didn't quite understand.
Constantly. That state of calm that they reach will naturally, like the whole point of finding that calm is finding that authenticity within you.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's how you reach that state.
Yeah.
And then that's when you're able to start actually having the capacity to think about that. I think it's actually a very natural occurrence to be in that state of relaxed nervous system, to feel your most authentic version of yourself, because that's when you feel the most creative as well.
Yeah.
And naturally you're going to think about, oh, where do I want to go? So I don't even think it's a thing that needs to be forced, to be honest. I think getting to that state, like, yes, there's obviously intention that, like, I think in greater levels, but I think the natural sort of getting into that state will actually lead to steps.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel. But also, it's not something we have to explore super deeply in this podcast.
We are triggered.
That's so avoidant. We don't have to explore this in the podcast, aka let's like cut it out.
Oh, this is funny. Okay. We are triggered. Oh. No, that's good. It's so good.
Oh my god.
But you can see, like, even my smile to the camera, like, in this just before. I'm so triggered. Oh, man. But did you feel like I was forced, like I was saying that we had to force things?
In regards to what? Sorry.
Just finding, like, what we were talking about in the podcast. Finding, calming your nervous system,
Yes.
getting space.
Like feeling like forced.
Because you said in this, you said, I don't actually think that we need to force anything.
I don't know what I meant by that, man. We need to force. Can we go?
No,
can we
but
go back?
Yeah.
What am I saying? Maybe you know what I could be completely. This is what like I said, when I'm under pressure, when I'm feeling triggered, I struggle to articulate myself.
No, you articulated yourself really well. It just, I think.
Oh, let's
I
just
think
listen
this is
back.
what we were talking about before. Yeah.
I'll listen back and I'll.
Like, yes, there's obviously intention that, like, I think in greater levels, but I think the natural sort of getting into that state will actually lead to steps.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel. But also, it's not something we have to explore super deeply in this podcast.
No.
Did I not skip far enough back?
Yeah, I don't think so, no. But it's just, I'm watching both of our expressions and there is like, I can see in your face now what you're saying as well.
Okay.
And then I can also see in me and being like, okay, that's me being like, internally, like, because what you said before, I think, was what I was pondering on then when you said you don't mean to force anything, like you don't believe that it has to be forced, and I was like, I don't think I said it had to be forced either, and I think that's what I was why I was like,
Got it.
Okay, but that's also.
So I was obviously projecting, like I was saying, oh, she's forcing. It's not that, but you weren't, you know.
But it's just, it's interesting because I wonder, like, you know, there is a question of like, okay, you felt that way. Was I doing that? As well, which is why I was asking if you thought I was doing that in hindsight. Because like if I was, that's interesting to ponder.
If I'm being like real, I don't think I currently have the analytical skills at the moment to decipher
The analytical.
Or I just,
Okay, I respect that.
yeah, I'm a little
respect
fried,
that.
but like I'm finding this interesting still.
Yeah, I respect that. That's okay. But also, I think that was how I deal as well, which might be a defense mechanism. I haven't looked at it from that lens yet, but that's also how I deal with disagreements when I'm wanting to keep the peace, but I also am not agreeing with you, or like not even because I didn't not agree with what you were saying. It's just I was definitely triggered then because I didn't feel that I said what it seemed you were implying I said. And so we seemed to be, there was like, I could sense animosity. And so just then when I was like, okay, I see, it was definitely a way of agreeing, but not actually agreeing. Like, that wasn't authentic.
Got it.
Like, you can tell that was not authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, this is cool. It's not every day you get to like do this. This is sick.
No, it's cool. It's awesome. And I think I'm really proud of us because I think this could be really scary for people to do as well, to look back on themselves and analyze it like this. But I'm having a lot of fun,
Yeah.
which is a good sign.
It's scary,
it means that,
but
like,
it's
we've
also
grown.
it's gotten fun now because it's like there's no judgment on these versions of us anymore.
Yeah,
Alright,
I love it.
Let's dive in.
Continue.
When I got into that state, because I was trying to force myself so much in my life to grow every single moment and to see where I could do better. When I was in that state, I was like, oh, I should be able to do better. And so even when I was calmer, immediately I'd put myself into a force.
I'm sorry.
Pause it if you want to laugh. I'm interested. Why are you drinking?
That's it. Yeah, literally. Or that's the thing. That's my defense mechanism. I just needed. I had so much energy. I had to put it somewhere. Like it's just funny the way I'm like sucking on the straw and you can hear it. Oh, anyway.
And so that didn't help me, which I think that's just why, you're 100% right. It is a really natural, to look into yourself. But if, your mindset is constantly
This is interesting, because when I picked, okay, this is something small, but when I picked up the coffee or whatever it is, I asked myself, I was like, I wonder if I hang on to it. Because if I hang on to it, it's definitely a calming, trying to regulate myself, move. And I do. And I finished drinking and now I'm just holding it. So it's.
Yeah, that was cool though. Good observation.
with yourself. But if your mindset is constantly it means I must do better, that's something we need to strip, because that's not going to help.
That's interesting. And I think at the end of the day, everyone has different sort of things. That doesn't make any sense. But for you have this constant desire.
I feel like we're back. I don't know about you, but at this point, I feel like there's openness again for some reason. I don't know. A little bit.
Yeah. Maybe I think there is, but it's just a really interesting interplay, because what I'm recognizing is that this is what two internal battles look like. Because externally, we're not really battling. Externally, it's not aggressive. We're not, being overtly defensive. But internally, there's disagreement here. And it's that subtle argument that's happening. I don't know right now. I'll have to watch more.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Growing and wanting to grow wasn't natural at the start.
Okay.
It was really hard. And I'm still on that journey. And that's a misconception that I think a lot of people will have with me, because
it was literally empty. I'm on edge.
Could you imagine right now if we release this just as it is?
Yeah.
Right now, this commentary is not what I think either of us want to put out there.
Trust me, I wouldn't have added this in. See, and that would have been inauthentic, right? Shit.
Isn't this wild? Because right now I'm okay, does it end here? Geez. We just ended on such animosity, but yeah.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. I know it was very different. If you managed to listen through the whole way through, honestly, good for you, because I feel like there's a shite ton of useful reflections in this, and I'm just so incredibly grateful for you, Niesha, for sitting here literally all day doing. I don't think you guys realize we've been here for 6 hours.
It's amazing that we still have energy though.
Right?
Like that's the value of this conversation.
Yeah.
The fact that we have managed to sustain energy. Like there's been dips and flows, but we've been able to continue this and still have engaging conversations and still pique each other's interest, which is awesome. And yeah, I'm just really grateful to you two. So thank you so much. And thank you so much for being open to doing something like this as well.
Of course.
We both had a similar idea and then we came together and we're like, wait,
We should do this.
yeah, and it's awesome because this is where magic lies. And I hope that in some way this helps you also reflect on certain conversations you've had with people, certain ways you've been, and also realize that you are changing and growing and evolving, and it's a really beautiful thing. And to see it doesn't have to be so serious. And
really
I hope
doesn't.
we'll be showing that a bit today. And that, it also helps you grow a lot, and it's just really nice to reflect sometimes and to see it and not judge yourself, but love where you are now. And yeah. It's just awesome. My camera just died.
I'll see you guys later. You can't see Niesha, so it's just me now.
We're done.
Ignore
the
her.
camera decided
Don't
it was
listen
my
to her.
time.
She's not saying anything.
Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Pursuit of Possible podcast. If you guys enjoyed, please consider giving us a follow on Spotify or whatever you do on Spotify. I actually have no idea. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on our weekly uploads. See you next time.